he asked in a low yet murderous voice, ready to kill whoever injured his dear grandson. Celine also stood up and hurriedly walked toward him. Orion's eyes twitched. He didn't expect his reaction would be so intense, yet this scene also warmed his heart. He gently gestured for both of them to calm down. "It's nothing serious, Grandpa, Grandma." Celine stood in front of him and looked at him deeply. Shining runes flashed in her eyes as she saw through his injuries. "How? All of your mana channels are damaged," she muttered in shock, placing her hand on his chest. "Did you try to form an awakening rune?" Celine looked at him sternly and asked. Orion rubbed the back of his head with slight embarrassment and nodded. "Yes, I was curious how it would go, and since I read that the backlash for forming the first rune isn't that hard, I tried my hand at it." "Who knew this would happen?" Eldrick heaved a sigh. You are too reckless, you should have asked one of us first about it." He moved closer and inspected his body. You are really injured, but your body seems unnaturally strong for someone at the awakening stage. But anyway, take this." He took out a bottle filled with a thick liquid. Orion's eyes flashed as he used his Eye of Revelation ability on the bottle. Ding. Item detected, liquid %. #is? Description: a rare alchemical potion capable of healing internal injuries and regenerating damaged mana channels. Further details: insufficient level. Unlock more seals of the Eye of Revelation for additional information. Damn, this shit is actually working. Though some information is missing, it's still good. He inwardly heaved a sigh after finally being able to use this particular ability. The last time he had tried, he was immeasurably disappointed in it. He quietly remembered the limited details provided by the Eye of Revelation. "Looks like I need to unseal it more if I want to use it more." "Thank you, Grandpa." "But what is it?" Orion carefully took the bottle and asked curiously. "Nothing, just something I got from a friend for healing injuries." "Quickly drink it up." Eldrick shook his head and gestured for him to drink it quickly. Orion lightly smiled, fully understanding that a treasure of this level would be highly protected even in the top noble houses, yet Eldrick gave it to him like nothing. This warmed his heart if nothing else. He carefully uncorked the bottle and swiftly drank down the thick, slightly sweet liquid. Almost instantly, a warm sensation spread from his core, moving throughout his body. Orion's eyes widened in amazement as he felt his damaged mana channels rapidly repairing themselves in real time. The intense, prickling pain gradually subsided, replaced by a gentle warmth soothing every inch of his being. "This is amazing," he whispered softly, clearly surprised by the potion's immediate effects. He expected the liquid to work slowly. After all, damaged mana channels were no small thing. But it looks like he underestimated the effects of an exalted-grade treasure. Eldrick chuckled lightly, shaking his head with gentle amusement. "It's good stuff indeed, lad, but don't get too excited. The rapid healing will slow down soon." As if on cue, the healing sensation began to wane, slowly reducing in intensity until it settled into a faint, soothing warmth. Orion frowned slightly, noticing the healing had become significantly slower. Eldrick placed a reassuring hand on Orion's shoulder and patted lightly. "Your mana channels aren't ordinary injuries. They're extremely delicate and intricate, so the potion's initial burst of healing was only there to stabilize your injuries. Now it will slowly heal over time. Complete recovery requires time and careful rest." Search the Novelfire.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Celine nodded in agreement, her gaze softening. "Your grandpa is right. Mana channels carry the lifeblood of a mage's power. Even slight damage can affect your foundation. For now, avoid strenuous training and give your body ample time to recuperate." Orion sighed softly, understanding their advice clearly. "I'll be more careful next time." Eldrick smiled and patted his back lightly, returning to his seat. "That's all we ask. Mistakes like this are part of the learning journey." Celine also relaxed, returning to her chair as the tension in the room gradually dispersed. "All right then," Eldrick's voice became soft again as he gestured toward the deliciously arranged food on the table. "Let's eat." You'll need plenty of nutrients to speed up your recovery. Orion chuckled and nodded, feeling the familial warmth radiating from both of them. Yes, Grandpa. He went ahead and took his seat. Celine started feeding him like usual by putting food on his plate. Orion, you're not allowed to scare me like that again, she said sternly after everyone had calmed down. Eldrick nodded his head alongside, clearly agreeing with her. Orion wryly smiled and nodded, don't worry, Grandma, I won't do something so reckless again. Looks like I can only rest and read books in the following days, he quietly thought to himself while eating. On the other hand, Rena and Fiora heaved a sigh after seeing that Eldrick and Celine weren't angry at Orion. The following days passed by quietly, each moment feeling lively and memorable. Orion took Eldrick and Celine's advice seriously, spending his time quietly recovering. Though the speed of healing had slowed down considerably, each day he felt progressively better and more at ease. Without the ability to train his mana, Orion focused on something else to pass his time. He decided to spend more time with Rena and Fiora, making even their days better as he felt his life slowly filling with colors. Master, are you sure this is what you want to eat? Fiora made it for the first time, you know? Rena quietly asked, looking embarrassed at the cookies Fiora had made for Orion. They were half burnt and half cooked, barely edible. Fiora was about to throw them away, but Rena brought them to Orion to show them. At first, she thought they could have a little laugh about it, but everything went in a different direction than what she had expected. Fiora stood to one side, her fingers fidgeting in nervousness as she looked at Rena with an accusing gaze. If one's gaze could kill, then Rena would probably be 6 feet under the ground. Of course I want to eat them, Orion said calmly. Fiora put so much effort into making them, how can I let it go to waste? But they aren't even made properly. Fiora stuttered even more than usual, clearly showing how nervous and scared she was. Orion shook his head with a smile and picked up a cookie. It was neither cooked properly nor was its shape good, but he could see that Fiora had put much effort into making it, so he didn't want to disappoint her, lest she stop trying at all. Hee, Master, are you sure about this? You might get mental poisoning from them. Ring n equal to. Heh, stop kidding me. A cookie can give poisoning to a fucking true dragon? My race would have gone extinct if that were the case. He inwardly chuckled and brought the cookie closer to his mouth. He smelled the slightly burnt aroma that wafted toward him, his eyes twitched slightly, but he still ate it. He chewed on it, feeling the burnt taste blasting inside his mouth before some sweetness followed. It was crispy all right, a little too crispy if he had to say. That was good, you should really cook more cookies for me, Fiora. Orion smiled and said to Fiora, trying his best not to make a cringy face due to the taste. Fiora's eyes watered a little, seeing Orion actually eating her cookies and not scolding her for them. Rena raised an eyebrow in suspicion, looking towards the cookies with surprise. Are they really that good? She couldn't believe it, but she also couldn't just ask for a cookie from her master's plate. Orion noticed her face and an evil grin spread on his face. Here, Rena, try this cookie. They are really good. He stood up and picked up one of the worst cookies from the plate and handed it to Rena. She suspiciously took the cookie and looked at it all over. At the same time, Orion walked towards Fiora and petted her head, distracting her from looking at Rena's reaction. Come on, Rena. What are you scared of? Didn't I also take it just now? Orion smiled and blocked Fiora's entire vision as he saw Rena eating it. Just as Rena took one bite of the cookie, her eyes opened wide as she nearly coughed out all the food she had eaten since the morning. But looking at Orion's smile, she quickly swallowed all the cookies that she had eaten before quickly picking up a jug of water and chugging it down. It was, really, good. She panted with eyes open and followed along with Orion's words while looking at him with an accusing gaze. He moved towards the side after he stopped patting Fiora, who opened her eyes in disappointment at having his hand removed. She looked towards Rena, who had composed herself by now. Was it really good? She nervously asked. Yes, of course. If you don't believe me, just look at Master. He will finish the entire plate alone to prove this to you. Her mind turned as she quickly replied before looking at Orion with a mischievous smirk. Orion's lips twitched, looking at her grin. He wanted nothing more than to beat her up right now. But turning around to look at Fiora's hopeful gaze, he took a deep breath and nodded his head. Of course, Rena will help me along so you won't say I'm lying. He quickly dragged her down with him. Rena's finger twitched. She didn't want to eat those god-awful cookies again. Neither of them had ever gotten any training in the kitchen since there were specialized chefs for the mansion. But who knows where Fiora got the mood to try making something. Orion grabbed Rena's hand and forced her to sit down with him on the bed. And that scared her so much that she jumped up from the bed before bowing quickly towards him. How can I dare to sit in the same place as Master? Just sit here. Since when did you become so upright? He looked at her from the corner of his eye and pointed in front of him. Rena hesitated. From a young age, Helena had taught her the proper manners of a maid. And among them was that she shouldn't sit at the same level as her master/mistress. And now Orion was asking her to sit down in front of him. She couldn't help but hesitate. Orion looked at her and realized why she was hesitating. After all, this was common in this world. Which noble would let a mere servant sit on the same level as them? But he couldn't care less about these social norms. Didn't Aunt Helena teach you to follow all words of your master? He sternly asked. Rena's body quivered. She softly nodded and cautiously sat down on the bed. Despite all her casualness with Orion, there were a few boundaries that she was not ready just yet to cross. Orion turned towards Fiora. Do I have to repeat myself? Fiora looked towards both Orion and Rena. She hesitated but took a soft step and sat down at the extreme edge of the bed, nearly dropping to the ground. Orion's lips twitched. He grabbed her arm and yeeted her to the center of the bed. Fiora's eyes widened as she nearly jumped down from the bed. Sit there. This is your punishment for not listening to my words, he sternly said, making sure she sat there. Xianxia the novelfire.nt website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Fiora's eyes watered slightly, nearly on the verge of crying, but she saw Rena picking up a cookie to eat. Orion finally smiled and asked Fiora, so, why don't you tell me something interesting about yourself? I don't have much to do these days anyway. Fiora hesitated, thinking deeply about what to tell him. Rena's ears perked up. She quickly shoved the cookie in and finished eating it. She was already expecting the taste, so she didn't choke on it this time. Master. Let me tell you something about her. It's an old thing, but when we were beginning to learn about mana and spells, Fiora flooded the entire kitchen due to her water magic. Ha ha ha, it was so funny seeing Madame Helena reprimanding her in front of everyone while she stood there, drenched in water. Fiora's face exploded with redness. She quickly rebutted, I only flooded the kitchen, but you burned down the entire training area when you snuck out to train in the night. Ha ha ha, Orion laughed out loud, looking at both of them bickering. He didn't know both of them were so clumsy. All three of them continued chatting and eating cookies. Both Orion and Rena didn't let Fiora eat any of her cookies, and due to her own meekness, she also didn't insist on it. They also asked about Orion's childhood, to which he replied that he didn't know and had no memory of it. He also noted to ask about their talent to Eldrick and Celine later. He didn't want them to get far behind him, because a point will come when they won't be able to follow him without sufficient strength. Just like that, time passed slowly. Mornings were often spent sitting in the garden, with fresh air and the scent of blooming flowers. Orion would lay on the chair comfortably while Rena and Fiora served him cookies and different juices each day. He would also read some of the books from the library aloud, letting both Fiora and Rena listen to him as they studied together. He realized that he enjoyed reading with them far too much rather than just sitting alone and reading. Sometimes, Fiora would timidly interrupt with curious questions, and Orion would patiently explain, finding joy in her growing confidence. Afternoons were filled with casual walks through the estate. They'd stroll slowly, pausing to watch small creatures that he had never seen in his past life scurrying about or simply enjoying the peaceful atmosphere. Orion found himself increasingly comfortable around the two, feeling that he could consider them as his first two true friends in this world. After all, in his last life he had more friends on Chatcord than in real life. The days quickly turned into a week, and Orion enjoyed each moment of the week with both Rena and Fiora. He also went to Celine to ask questions about why he failed and what to look out for when he would form the rune next time. And by the end of the week, Orion felt fully rejuvenated, his mana channels healed completely within a week due to the effects of that liquid. Otherwise, he would have had to wait months for them to slowly heal. Soon, the peaceful days came to an end as the time for departure arrived. Eldrick and Celine had already arranged everything, and preparations were complete for their journey to the capital. Standing by the estate's entrance, Orion took a deep breath, feeling a slight excitement building within him. Beside him stood Rena and Fiora, their eyes sparkling with anticipation for the journey ahead. "Ready?" Eldrick asked warmly, placing a gentle hand on Orion's shoulder. Orion nodded confidently, a bright smile forming on his lips. "Yes, Grandpa." Celine gently squeezed Orion's hand, her voice tender. "You don't need to be nervous about the new environment. We will be going together with you." She mistook his excitement for nervousness. Orion chuckled and nodded his head, not wanting to elaborate on this. At the side stood Edgar, Helena, and Lucan, ready for departure. "Where are the rest of the maids and butlers?" Orion curiously asked, looking around. He only saw the core people of the estate. Eldrick chuckled and softly explained, "I already sent them towards the capital in advance. A caravan with some high-level guards was going, so I put them all there. They should arrive even earlier than us." "Ah, no wonder I didn't see the maids for the last couple of days in the mansion." Orion nodded his head. "Were you looking for maids specifically, Master?" Cough, what nonsense. He ignored her and looked towards the carriage that Lucan had prepared for them. "Come, let's go now," Eldrick said and motioned for Celine to get up on the carriage before asking Orion to get up. He nodded his head and got up on the carriage before Rena and Fiora got up as well. Celine and Edgar boarded the second carriage. It was spacious enough inside to hold 8 people comfortably. Once inside, Orion sat down on one side with Rena and Fiora sitting at both sides of him, while Eldrick and Celine sat on the opposite side. Once the carriages started moving, Celine slyly smiled and looked at the 3 of them. "You 3 seem to have gotten awfully close during this time. Is there any secret to this?" Fiora's face turned red while Rena turned her head to look at the outside view, leaving Orion staring at Celine with a helpless smile. "Fiora's cookies helped us quite a bit." "Oh? She learned how to make cookies?" Celine raised an eyebrow and looked towards Fiora's hands. She had gotten calluses and cuts from trying to learn different things in the last few days. Eldrick smiled, "Let the young ones have their own fun. No need to meddle too much." "Huh? I didn't even get to talk with them properly, and you're already interrupting me?" Celine looked at him with wide eyes, as if she couldn't believe he had started lecturing her already. Eldrick coughed and looked outside, deciding to ignore whatever was happening. Orion quickly changed the topic. "Grandpa, where are we heading now?" Eldrick thought for a second and replied, "We will bypass a few cities and towns before arriving at BrightGate City. It is quite an interesting city in itself. There are various races coming to trade and increase their influence." "Ah yeah, due to the peace treaty. Looks like the races are prospering together." Orion nodded his head. He had read about the peace treaty between the various races of the Neruthal continent due to their common enemy, demons. "So, how long will it take for us to reach there?" he curiously asked. Eldrick calculated with his fingers. If we travel while taking a few breaks, then we should reach there in about 2 days. Don't worry, we will stop at BrightGate City for the night. You young ones can go around looking for stuff." Orion smiled and nodded his head, and continued, "Why don't you tell me some interesting stuff about that city? Didn't you read the books in the library? You should know about that place," Eldrick said in confusion. Orion rubbed the back of his head. "Haha, I was expecting some interesting things that are not written in the books." Celine smiled and took over the conversation. "We aren't living there long enough to know about the ins and outs of these things. You can learn more after arriving there and exploring the surroundings yourself. Orion nodded and resigned himself to whatever comes his way. The carriage continued to travel slowly, passing by trees and villages one after another. In a lot of villages, children seemed to run after mages who were showing their tricks. But the majority of them were nothing but low tier 1 mages who only knew some tricks. There were also warriors training to join the army of the kingdom, while some trained to serve the nobles or join the adventurers' guild. It's good that the common people of this world have more paths to join than just nobles or workers under merchants. The adventurers' guild seems quite a nice place. Maybe I should visit it. Saw the ovalfire.at website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Master, from what I have gathered, the Adventurers Guild is one of the biggest organizations on the Neruthal continent. They even have branches in empires and among other races. You should really join them, since the joining requirements are lax and nearly anyone can join. I'll look into that later. Let me enjoy the view for now, he said before serenely looking out of the window. I know there are some beauties among those villages, but who exactly are you looking at, Master? Orion's lips twitched, hearing her words. He hurriedly moved his gaze away from where he was looking and looked toward the trees. I'm looking at the scenery, of course. What were you thinking? Anyways, I can't wait to reach the capital. It'll be so fun to learn new stuff. Orion smiled lightly and said, thinking about how much he would enjoy attending the academy. But will you attend the academy, Master? If I'm not wrong, you bunked your university quite a lot in your last life. Orion inwardly chuckled, I wouldn't have missed a single day if they were teaching me magic in university. Isn't this your excuse, Master? Where did you learn to talk so much? He finally couldn't stand it and asked. Of course I learned it from my dear master. Asterisk greater than over equal to omega less than over equal to. You are irredeemable. He gently shook his head and looked out the window, where a few village women were pulling water from a well. Master, stop staring at them so much, Rena and Fiora might notice. Warning. 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 Unidentified cosmic interference detected. Master. Some unknown force is hijacking the system. The Limitless system is undergoing a forced upgrade. I can't stop it. System stability is dropping. Core protocols are shifting. Estimated time until upgrade, 6 days, SE of the novel, Heir.at website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Please stay safe until the process completes. I'll do my best to protect you. Root cause trace in progress. Origin linked to the mark of FA. Orion looked at the prompts for a few seconds before softly turning his head back, looking out of the window. Finally, I can enjoy the scenery in peace. System emergency ignored. Emotional damage +1. Degree. Master? You're just going to ignore that? The fuck, I thought you went offline. He said speechlessly. No. Master doesn't care about me. Warning. System going offline. Looks like it's due to my mark of fate. Is something going to happen during this journey to the capital? Or after I arrive at the capital, he wondered while looking out the window. Celine looked toward him, tilting her head in confusion as she had felt something inexplicable from him. But deciding to ignore that, she closed her eyes to rest. Fiora and Rena looked at each other before following his gaze. Fiora quickly looked away, not wanting him to notice her staring. Rena felt the urge to tease him, but with Eldrick and Celine present, she simply closed her eyes too. Orion chuckled to himself. How can they escape my gaze, when they're sitting right beside me? After a while of seeing the different scenery outside, he also closed his eyes and started taking a rest. After a long while, Lucan stopped the carriage as the sky began to darken, while the sun cast a red hue on the terrain. Master, we should rest here for the night. We can continue traveling in the morning. Eldrick nodded approvingly, slowly rising from his seat. Good. Everyone, let's descend and stretch our legs. Orion stepped down first, extending his hand to help Rena and Fiora down from the carriage. Celine elegantly descended on her own, scanning their surroundings for anything amiss. She nodded toward Edgar and Helena as their carriage arrived shortly after, stopping just behind Lucan's. Edgar, Helena, please set up the tents. Lucan, assist them. I'll establish a protective barrier to ensure our safety through the night, Celine instructed calmly, moving to stand at the edge of their chosen campsite. Yes, mistress, Edgar and Helena responded simultaneously, quickly taking action, which seemed to have been performed countless times already. Lucan followed close behind, helping unload and arrange the equipment. Orion observed Celine with curiosity as she gracefully moved her fingers, tracing intricate patterns in the air. Threads of mana flowed from her fingertips, intertwining to form a glowing dome-like barrier encompassing their campsite. This will keep most unwanted guests at bay, Celine explained, smiling softly toward Orion. Though the official kingdom roads are generally safe, beasts might still venture close during the night, especially if they're particularly bold or hungry. Eldrick nodded in agreement. Indeed, though the chances are slim, it's always better to be cautious. Especially at night. Soon, several tents were set up neatly around a clear space at the center. Edgar arranged a few logs and branches, preparing a campfire, while Helena took out cooking utensils. Orion watched intently as Eldrick raised his hand, a faint glow emanating from a ring he wore. Food items, spices, and ingredients appeared seamlessly in his grasp. Intrigued, Orion moved closer, his gaze fixed on Eldrick's ring. Grandpa, what's that ring on your hand? How does it work? Eldrick raised an eyebrow, chuckling at Orion's curiosity. Ah, you noticed, lad. Well, no shit when you take out items like that. He inwardly rolled his eyes at his words but continued to listen intently. This is a spatial storage ring, quite a useful artifact. It works similarly to an inventory, storing items within a small personal space. Spatial storage ring? Orion repeated, thinking back to the many times he read about it in novels. How exactly does it function? Do you just think about an item and it appears? And do you have to learn space spells to make it work? Celine interjected gently, seeing Eldrick's thoughtful expression. It's slightly more complex. The ring has a tiny spatial pocket created through advanced runic formations on top of a spatial stone. You infuse a trace of mana and focus on the item you want to retrieve or store, and the ring responds accordingly. Spatial stone? He looked at Celine and asked. This was the first time he'd heard about spatial stones in this world. Yes, spatial stone. It is an extremely rare material which can be found around rifts or portals to different planes. It is quite expensive as well, Celine gently explained. Eldrick chuckled again, handing Orion a small apple freshly taken from the ring and a spatial ring. Here, try it yourself. Just infuse a bit of mana and mentally picture placing or retrieving something. Orion took the apple, carefully examining it before infusing a small stream of mana, trying to imagine placing it back inside. Nothing happened, causing Orion's brow to furrow slightly. It takes practice, Eldrick encouraged warmly. Focus clearly, imagine a space within the ring, and gently place the item there with your intent. Taking a deep breath, Orion closed his eyes, visualizing a small pocket dimension within the ring. With a clearer intention this time, he felt a faint tug, and the apple vanished from his hand, seamlessly placed inside the ring. Ah, it worked! Orion exclaimed, eyes bright with excitement. It's like my inventory, but I can probably upgrade my inventory, unlike this. And the space is also quite small. Celine smiled knowingly, curiosity sparkling in her eyes. Did you like that spatial ring, dear? You can keep that one. Later, when we reach the capital, I will buy you a bigger one. Eldrick shook his head. You spoil him too much. Didn't ask. Celine ignored him and pulled Orion's hand, making him sit down with her nearby where Edgar was making the campfire. Edgar placed dry wood in order inside a circle of stones before utilizing a spell to light up a small flame on a branch and threw it inside. Helena skillfully began cutting vegetables and meat before cooking it atop the campfire. Rena and Fiora helped her with that. After a while, Rena and Fiora came to sit at one side of Orion as Helena presented food to all of them. "Thanks, Aunt Helena, for the food," Orion smilingly said and picked up the plate filled with food. Helena smiled and picked up her own plate to eat. Eldrick and Celine were already used to eating with Helena and Edgar from traveling all over the place with them. They wanted to see how Orion would react to eating together with servants. But they worried too much. He wasn't like the noble kids who couldn't stand sitting at the same level as maids and servants. This also made them pleased as they ate their food while laughing and chatting. "Grandpa, when can I enter the Thunderhall Academy after arriving at the capital?" he asked while drinking some soup. You can enter whenever you want. I know the dean of the academy, so you won't have trouble." He stroked his beard while smiling. Didn't he say something about admission before? He thought speechlessly. Celine lightly hit Eldrick's shoulder. "No need to boast here," then turned to Orion and kindly explained, "We will send you to the academy within 3 to 4 days after arriving at the capital. After all, you also need a bit of time to get used to a new place." Orion nodded his head, before turning his gaze towards Rena and Fiora. He turned back to Celine and asked, "Will I live in the academy or in the mansion? How can I bear to let my dear grandson live alone in the academy?" "Of course, you will live with us in the mansion," she giggled and said. Orion heaved a sigh of relief. He wasn't prepared to just leave both Rena and Fiora after having improved their relationship. Rena looked at him and smiled slyly, obviously understanding his underlying meaning when he gazed at her, while Fiora focused on finishing her food. Just then, Edgar came towards them. "Master, the tents are ready. As Mistress Celine had entrusted, we had made 3 tents." Orion raised an eyebrow, interested in knowing who will sleep where. Celine mischievously smiled. "Perfect, since we have already finished eating, let's head to rest. We need to move early." She stood up as the rest of the group put away their plates and stood up as well. "I will sleep in one tent with Helena, while Edgar and Lucan will sleep in one tent with the old man." She then turned towards Orion. "As for you, Orion." Orion felt his eyes twitching. He could already guess what his doting grandma was planning for him. "You will sleep with Fiora and Rena since you guys have gotten close lately. I would have made a separate tent for them, but unfortunately, we only prepared 3. We couldn't find more tents in the city there." She made a dramatic face, as if she had looked through the entire city for the tents. Rena and Fiora both blushed furiously, but none of them complained and simply bowed before scurrying towards their tent. You are having way too much fun in this, Grandma." Orion shook his head and said. If I don't look out for my baby boy, then who else will?" She winked at him and entered the tent with Helena. Edgar came towards Orion and lightly whispered in his ear, "The tents are soundproof, young Master Orion." "Oh, fuck off." Orion nearly screamed out loud before quickly entering his tent. Novelfire. Any *T website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Ha ha ha. Lucan boisterously laughed, looking at Edgar's smile. "Don't tease young master, otherwise he might take revenge on you later." Edgar turned around and looked towards Lucan proudly. "I have nothing to get embarrassed about. I am a single man dedicated to my duty." Eldrick chuckled. "Beware, he might find a wife for you in the capital." Edgar's smile froze, however, he quickly calmed down. "Then I can't thank young master enough for that. However, that's for later. For now, let's just go and sleep. We don't need to worry about the beasts due to Mistress Celine's formation." The 3 men chatted for a bit and entered the last tent. They were already used to sleeping in this order due to their constant traveling, so they comfortably sat down. Orion entered the tent and looked at Fiora and Rena standing inside, looking at him with shy expressions. After all, despite spending much time together, they never spent a night in the same room, much less a tent. Orion coughed, trying to ease the atmosphere. He also didn't know how to react as this was a first for him. Even still, he tried to calm down. "Let's sit down and chat." I don't think any of us will be having any good sleep for quite a while now. Rena heaved a sigh and nodded her head, while Fiora repeatedly nodded her head as the two of them sat down at one side of the tent. Orion smiled and sat at the opposite end of them. The three of them sat in silence for a while, making everyone awkward before Orion decided to ask something. Well, let me ask a question if you guys are going to stay silent. What are your elemental affinities? Fiora and Rena looked at each other before Rena replied, I have water affinity, but I mostly practice spirit arts. Oh? Spirit arts? Aren't you a talented one? He gently praised. Hee, Rena giggled happily hearing his praise. But I'm only a beginner, I have not even summoned a single spirit beast yet. You can just take your time and slowly learn. I'm sure you can contract a strong beast once you get the hang of it. Your sea of consciousness must be quite strong for you to take this path. He calmly said while encouraging her. Rena repeatedly nodded her head in agreement. Yes, I was blessed with a stronger and larger sea of consciousness than others. What about Fiora? He turned her head and asked. I have fire affinity, and I also practice spirit arts. She lowered her head and shyly said. Oh, come on, no need to be so shy now. You are even more talented in spirit arts. You have already formed a contract with a fire elemental spirit beast. Rena encouraged her to speak more openly. Orion raised an eyebrow in surprise. You already formed a contract? Why don't you show me? He curiously asked. Fiora's fingers fidgeted together as she nervously glanced at Orion and then at Rena. Cough, master. Her summoning art is now perfect. She sometimes fails to summon her contracted beasts, so she is worried that she will make a fool out of herself in front of you. Rena quickly explained, remembering Fiora's predicament. Ah, so it was this. Orion gently smiled and gestured for her to calm down. Don't worry, if you want to show me, then you can try as many times as you want. Rena's eyes lit up. You won't disappoint Master now, will you? Rena. Stop putting pressure on her. Orion sternly said. Rena stuck her tongue out at him but got silent, staring at Fiora silently. Fiora took a deep breath, whatever Rena said seemed to have worked on her. She didn't want to disappoint Orion, so she decided to give it her all. Silently, she whispered the chant of the summoning spell. A gust of wind bellowed inside the tent, softly blowing Orion and Rena's clothes. Strange, complex runes began forming in front of Fiora, who opened her eyes and infused her mana into the summoning circle. However, her gaze drifted towards Orion, and for a split second, her concentration wavered, disestablishing the entire spell as it quickly broke down and dissipated. Orion and Rena silently stared at Fiora, whose eyes quickly began to water up. Orion gently moved closer to her and softly patted her head. No need to feel pressured, Fiora. You can take your time and try again if you want. Or if you are not feeling it, then you can try it another day. Fiora softly took a breath and clenched her fist, her eyes slowly filling with determination. What better motivation can there be for Fiora than Master personally cheering her on? Rena thought to herself with amusement, yet she couldn't hide a sliver of jealousy that formed in her heart. Fiora, on the other hand, calmed down after Orion moved back to his place. She gathered all her courage and this time only focused on the summoning circle instead. She gathered mana again and activated the contract that she had formed inside her sea of consciousness before guiding it out and making dense, complex runes in the air. The summoning circle rotated before flipping and dropping to the ground. The temperature of the tent rose as a small rift appeared on top of the circle. Orion and Rena looked intently inside the rift, while Orion wondered what type of beast would emerge. Boom! The summoning circle exploded with a puff of flames, which swiftly extinguished to reveal a majestic figure, one wreathed in flames and seemed to be the god of everything, a cat. It looked down on both Orion and Rena before jumping towards Fiora's lap. It lay there and rubbed her face with her hands. Did this fucker just look down upon me? Orion's lips twitched as he focused his gaze on the feline beast, slightly activating his dragon might. The cat jumped up and looked left and right, terrified. It couldn't understand where it felt that primal fear from. As if an apex predator had targeted it. What happened, Papa? Fiora looked at the cat and gently hugged her back into her embrace, softly patting her sleek orange fur. Orion quietly dissipated his dragon might, looking towards the cat with a pitying gaze. Papa? Really? I would have committed suicide out of shame if someone named me that. Cough, is this your contracted beast? It seemed to be a tier 1 beast, huh? He curiously asked. Rena nodded her head. Yes, master, she contracted with her a couple of weeks ago. We had both practiced together after we had awakened and formed our respective affinity runes. But she beat me to it. And she is a feline tier 1 beast from the fire spirit world. One of the 5 main spirit elemental planes, huh? That means her potential must be quite high. You struck gold, Fiora. Looks like your talent with spirit arts is quite high. He praised her without holding back. Fiora blushed and lowered her head, softly patting Papa to hide her shy face. No, master. Praise me as well. Rena couldn't take it anymore and simply asked. Huh? Why? He looked towards Rena and speechlessly asked. I don't know anything. Rena huffed and turned her face to the side. He speechlessly shook his head. Looks like she feels I'm ignoring her and focusing more on Fiora. He inwardly heaved a sigh. Orion smiled and said with a soft tone, actually, Rena, I think you are equally as amazing as Fiora as well. Rena blinked, turning to face Orion with wide, curious eyes. You have been trying your hardest despite not having formed a contract yet. And not to mention your impressive control over your emotions. He leaned back slightly, looking at her with a charming smile. But the thing I like the most about you? You believed in Fiora and encouraged her when she was doubting herself. I don't think she would have even tried to summon the beast had you not edged her. Those are admirable traits, if anything. So yes, you are amazing in yourself. He finished saying with a genuine and kind voice. Rena stared at him, slightly stunned. She hadn't expected him to say so many things at once. Now she didn't know how to react. Slowly a beautiful blush crept up on her cheeks, reaching her eyes. Yet a soft smile formed on her face, and a burden she didn't know she was feeling in her heart dissipated. The 3 of them continued to chat till late in the night. Fiora sent back her summon as keeping it in the material world consumed her mana. And being only a tier 1 mage, she didn't have much of that. Ah fuck, forgot to use Eye of Revelation on that little bastard. Orion slightly lamented but didn't think much of it. If she can summon her once, then she can summon her again. Slowly, both the girls fell asleep. Orion lay at one side of the tent, and Fiora and Rena slept at the other side after extinguishing the candle burning inside the tent. It was an eventful day, if I consider the system upgrade. I wonder what new thing will I get next. Something OP like gacha? Slowly, his mind drifted off to sleep as he continued trying to deduce what he could get from the system update. However, he didn't notice the strange flicker in the deepest parts of his sea of consciousness. Darkness. Endless darkness with no destination in sight greeted Orion as he struggled to open his eyes. He tried to speak, yet no voice came out of his mouth. With great effort, he managed to find the center of gravity and stood up straight in the boundless void. Yet he felt a strange, majestic presence looming in the darkness. Turning around, he saw dozens of towering pillars supporting what seemed to be the beginning as well as the end of everything. But that one gaze seemed to have offended the entire void as it rumbled, forcing him to shift his gaze back towards the towering towers. He took a step forward, trying to touch one of the towers, however, it seemed to be made up of nothing but dreams and illusions. It vanished as soon as he touched it. His eyes became filled with a maddening desire to possess one of the pillars as his own. He continued running, touching one pillar after another. However, none remained standing as they all turned into dust. Slowly, he ascended towards the peak of the towering towers, and there, his gaze landed upon what seemed to be a throne made out of countless runes and something higher which he couldn't yet comprehend. He reached out towards it, however, just as it had started, he passed through it yet again. But as if not recognizing the futility of his efforts, he continued moving from one pillar to another, each taking him mere seconds to uncountable years to reach. His gaze remained unfocused as it evidently told her he wasn't fully conscious of the events happening. And soon, he reached another peak of the pillar, where he saw a majestic throne placed, and similarly, he thought he would pass through it, so he rushed inside headfirst, only for him to hit it solidly. Boom. Search the novelfire.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. An apocalyptic explosion occurred in the place, blowing away all the surrounding pillars and leaving only 2 pillars intact. All of a sudden, an absurd pressure descended from nowhere, forcing Orion to freeze in his place. It is not yet time for you to take your throne, O heir of the 2 thrones. Boom. Just as the voice finished speaking, everything shattered in the place, leaving Orion standing in the void as he felt himself being suffocated. Gasp. Orion woke up from his sleep while taking an intense breath. His entire body was covered in cold sweat. Ha, 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 his heart beat rapidly, nearly exploding due to the blood rush. What the fuck what that, he nearly screamed out loud. Rena and Fiora didn't wake up as he hadn't made too big of a commotion. Slowly, his heart calmed down. He took a deep breath, placing a hand on his chest. A dream? No, it was far too real to be a dream. He could still vividly remember the feeling of someone pressuring his heart into oblivion. Lumi. Lumi. He called out to Lumi, the only person who could make sense of this situation. Yet there came no reply. He fell back on the soft mattress on the ground, heaving a few deep breaths. She's getting upgraded, huh? Throne. Heir of the 2 thrones. Was that voice talking about my human and dragon heritage? After calming down completely, he tried to make sense of the situation. Do these emperor heritages symbolize something else? He continued to think and make theories about the dream until his thoughts stopped at a single point. Did I have this dream due to the Limitless systems update? He inwardly thought, feeling more and more sure of his guess. The system began updating today and I had this dream on the same fucking day. Huh. I should ask Lumi about this later. He finally decided it was not going to lead him anywhere. Turning around, he tried to sleep again. Chirping noises made their way inside Orion's tent, stirring him slightly as he slowly opened his eyes. Beside him, Rena and Fiora began waking up as well. Orion stretched his upper body while waking up, looking towards Rena and Fiora as they clumsily woke up, looking rather disheveled. Good morning, you two, he softly said. Good morning, Master Orion X2. Both of them greeted him back rather lazily, clearly still sleepy. What? You two didn't get enough rest yesterday night, he asked. I'm just not used to sleeping outside. Rena stretched, raising her arms above her head and exposing her slim waist, attracting Orion's gaze. I haven't slept outside in a while. Fiora timidly said, looking towards the wall of the tent for any surprise beast attack. Orion tiredly chuckled, let's go out, or else Grandma won't let us live in peace. Both of them giggled at his words while Rena said, hee, Master, you go on ahead, we will come after cleaning up the inside. Orion nodded his head, very well. With that, he headed out, leaving Fiora and Rena cleaning the tent. Good morning, dear. Celine gently greeted him, sitting at the campfire. Ha ha ha, lad, did you have fun yesterday night? Eldrick looked behind him before laughing and asking. The soundproofing works both ways, so Fiora and Rena won't be able to hear his shameless words. Orion's lips twitched. He didn't bother to reply to Eldrick and softly greeted them all. Good morning, Grandma, Grandpa. Good morning, Uncle Edgar, Uncle Lucan, and Aunt Helena. Greetings, young master, was the night eventful for you? Edgar stroked his short beard and asked with a smile. Good morning, young master. Helena stood up and bowed towards him. Search the novel_fire.at website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Lucan stood up and bowed before making a comment on his longtime friend. "Good morning, Master, I hope you won't throw old man Edgar off some cliff." He didn't even know how to reply to the two of them, he just shook his head and sat down beside Eldrick. "How long till we leave for the city?" Orion asked. "What's the rush, lad? Sometimes, the journey is more important than the destination. Learn to enjoy the time you spend with others and stop rushing everything. You will have a long life ahead of you due to your potential." Edgar stroked his long white beard while giving his sagely advice. "But the destination this time is quite important. It's the academy. I would need to head there and study if I want to live long." He gave him a side glance. "Hee, little Orion is right," Celine giggled and agreed with him. "But even still, you should enjoy each moment you live, Orion. You can never know what life might throw at you." Orion became silent, remembering his dream. He might not want to admit it, but his future seemed rather bleak at this moment. He felt from the bottom of his heart that no matter how much he trained or how strong he became, he would always be insignificant compared to the voice that spoke to him. Was that entity even stronger than Echo? He inwardly mused. Echo had never given him that soul-crushing pressure. But it might be due to him not wanting to kill him off accidentally. Eldrick and Celine looked at each other, seeing him so deep in concentration. "We will leave after breakfast. It shouldn't take us long to reach the first city after that." Eldrick finally gave him a direct reply. To which Orion nodded his head. "All right, so, what's for breakfast?" He decided to push the matter of the dream to the back of his head and ask Lumi about it when she gets back online. "Helena and I cooked today. I'm sure you will like it," she said before opening the pot above the campfire and smelling the aroma. It's done." Helena stood up and served the food in different plates for everyone. And from behind, Rena and Fiora came out after cleaning everything. "Here, Rena and Fiora, take your plates and sit down," Celine said to the two of them before everyone sat down to eat. Orion stretched his body after finishing his food. Fiora and Rena helped clean up the place while Edgar and Lucan pulled out the tents. "About time we head out, huh?" Eldrick said, looking at the neat place. Orion looked impressed at the cleaning skills of Lucan and Edgar. "If I didn't know them better, I would have thought they are the archbishops of some cleaning cult. They really made this place clean." Lucan and Edgar's lips twitched hearing his sarcastic praise. "Haha, young master can really spot talent. It is indeed I, the one who can clean the heavens, at your service." Lucan didn't miss the chance to shamelessly boast. "Don't talk so big. Who knows, the Celestial Emperor might smite you down." Orion smirked and said. Lucan's smile froze as he turned his head back and focused on the task ahead. Celine, Rena, and Fiora giggled looking at their banter. And soon, everything got cleaned while Helena put away the tools back in her spatial ring. "All right, let's move on now," Eldrick said before opening the carriage's door and letting Celine enter before motioning for Orion to enter. "You should enter, Grandpa. I'm not a kid after all." He stood straight and said righteously. "Huh? I don't remember this righteous lad when we first embarked from the city." Eldrick asked in confusion. "Don't think too much, Grandpa. Let's hurry up, we are already late after breakfast," he quickly urged. All right. Eldrick shook his head and boarded the carriage. "All right, now it's your turn." He turned around and said to Rena and Fiora. Both of them nodded their heads. Rena walked at the front. My, what a gentleman," she teasingly said before boarding the carriage. Fiora quickly followed and stepped up as well. Even down there, Fiora's winning against Rena." Orion silently mused, resisting the urge to look again. He shook his head and boarded the carriage as well. Inside, he saw that the two of them had left the middle spot empty again and had turned their heads to opposite sides. "I can't have the window seat?" He inwardly shook his head before sitting in the middle. Lucan whipped the horses as the carriages started traveling again. Celine started chatting with Orion about various things. from gossiping about the kingdom to teasing him about the night. Orion laughed at most of her things and just acted dense when she brought up the talk of the night. "Ah, Grandma, can you tell me more about spirit magic? I saw Fiora summon a spirit from it, but I didn't find many records of it in Grandpa's library." He finally changed the talk from Celine teasing him. "Oh? She showed you her summons? That's quite a feisty ember cat. They are a common species from one of the 5 main elemental planes. Did you like seeing her?" She softly asked, having already seen the cat's attitude. "Ah, yes, the cat was good, but the most interesting thing was the summoning circle formed during the summoning. The runes upon it were quite captivating." He nodded his head and swiftly ignored the cat's topic. "Yes, the summoning circle is formed with the runic language. You will learn that in the academy. And you will need to learn the runic language for a lot of stuff, like for your awakening rune, for creating spells in your sea of consciousness, even for runesmithing, you would need that. All in all, anything related to mana needs runic language as its base." Celine softly explained. "Well, I mostly knew this." He silently mused. "Huh." Lumi would have replied, "But you still went ahead and tried to form an awakening rune, master, or something like that." He inwardly chuckled, thinking to himself, yet a part of him already began to miss the lively banter. See the novelfire.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Now, let's get back to spirit arts. It's a main profession like a runesmith. It has multiple parts, and each focuses on something different and interesting. For example, spirit contracts. You can form contracts with beasts from the spirit worlds and can use them to battle. They can also merge with the user if their synergy is good enough. "So, sort of like battle armor?" he curiously asked. "Yes, you can treat it as such. There are more interesting things for you to find on this path, like spirit communication, spirit sense, soul technique, spirit imbuement, and others." Rena and Fiora were also listening attentively since both of them were learning this path. They never had the privilege to learn directly from someone at the level of Celine, so this was a rare opportunity for them. "Basically, spirit arts are related to the soul, right?" He continued asking questions as he was supposed to, even though some fragmented knowledge about spirit arts was available in his sea of consciousness. "Correct. It also depends on the size of the sea of consciousness of the practitioner. You need an above-average sea of consciousness just to be eligible to train in this path. Then you also need to have compatibility with spirit beasts to be able to bond with them." She patiently explained. "Anyways, you can learn more about this in the academy. Why are you using all this time to learn about this when you could be enjoying the scenery?" She changed her tone and said, as if having enough of explaining things. "I wanted to ask about spirit imbuement as well." "Well, whatever, I'll just learn about it in the academy." He didn't want to ask more boring questions to his grandma, or who knows how she'll get back at him later. The carriage continued to travel at a good speed. The horses were not simple wild animals but mana beasts which had much higher endurance and speed. That's why they could travel such a great distance so quickly. Otherwise, with normal horses, even a month wouldn't have been enough just to reach the city. During this time, Fiora and Rena spoke more often in the presence of Celine and Eldrick, having become much more familiar. Eldrick also shared his knowledge with him, albeit only about thunder spells and other things he knew. And some political stuff along the way. He also managed to learn new things about the city they were heading to, BrightGate. There is a huge market there that sells most of the stuff a mage or warrior or other professions might need. All the way up to tier 9. Orion was both happy and disheartened learning about this. On one hand, he wanted nothing more than to buy a lot of good stuff, and on the other hand, he wanted to save mana crystals to draw some treasures. "I'll just see as it comes. If there's something useful for me, then I'll ask Grandpa to buy it for me," he decided in the end. He felt no shame using his grandpa's money, as getting stronger was far more important than a little shame. From afar, a large line of travelers and merchants could be seen standing in front of the city gates. There, the guards collected a small fee and checked the people for any wanted criminals. Keep walking. Don't make a damn crowd here. The guard captain shouted while leading the others inside quickly. It was a daily job for him to take care of so many travelers, so he was already used to it by now. From far behind, Orion and his group arrived. Damn, that's a big line, Orion muttered under his breath, looking at the large line. Eldrick proudly chuckled, haha, we don't need to wait in line. Let's go. Lucan never stopped the carriage as they continued walking alongside the line. Some people were dissatisfied among the crowd, but no one came to the front to speak. They all knew those who had the power to cut in line weren't someone they could mess with. Halt! The guard captain shouted, holding a spear in front of his chest upright. Is this enough? Eldrick threw out a medallion as if it were trash. The guard raised an eyebrow and caught it with one hand before taking a closer look. His eyes widened as all four of his limbs began trembling. Greetings, my lord. He quickly fell to his knees and greeted Eldrick. Rise. He calmly ordered. The guard stiffly stood up and gave back the medallion with both hands respectfully. Can we pass? Eldrick still calmly asked. Yes, of course, my lord. Hey, clear the way. He turned around and shouted at the guards who were looking at this scene. The guard captain had never lost his cool like this, even in front of the clan leaders of BrightGate City. But now he was acting like someone stepped on a cat's tail. However, they hurriedly cleared the way. Eldrick sat back down on his seat and closed his eyes like a senior while the carriage passed by the city gates. Orion and the others silently looked at all of this in amazement. Stop acting now, old man. We entered the city. Celine snorted and said. Ha ha ha, my boy, what do you think of your old man's prestige? Aren't I just awesome? Orion's lips twitched. I didn't know you were such a big shot. Should I expect fireworks when we enter the city? Celine giggled. He might look impressive here, but in the places that truly matter, he's just another old fossil. Humph. Eldrick crossed his arms and looked out the window with a dignified snort, as if peasants like them couldn't possibly comprehend his greatness. Lucan, he called out, take us to an inn. It's already evening. We'll rest here and continue tomorrow morning. Orion's eyes lit up. Then can we explore the city tonight, Grandpa? Eldrick nodded. Yes, but you'll go with Edgar. Sounds good, Orion replied without hesitation. I don't have any anyway. Take Helena too, Celine added. She knows the market better than Edgar. I'll give some mana crystals to Edgar, though probably only copper, silver, and gold coins are mostly used here. He will have to convert the mana crystals. Xianxia the novel Fire. Any *T website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. What's the conversion rate of mana crystals, he wondered. Soon, Lucan stopped the cart before an inn. Alright, Eldrick stood up, motioning to the others, time to get down. Orion and the others followed after him as they all dismounted the carriage. Once everyone got off, Celine clapped her hands lightly. Alright. Edgar, Helena, you two will go with Orion, Rena, and Fiora. Make sure they don't cause trouble, or get into any. Edgar respectfully bowed. As you wish, but will you two be fine without any of us? You'd rather listen to Eldrick snore all evening? And we still have Lucan if something comes up. She waved her hand. Fair enough, Edgar muttered and adjusted his coat. Come on then, young master. Time to explore the city. Finally, Orion grinned, turning to the girls. You two ready? Rena stretched with a smile. I've been waiting for this. Fiora nodded, a hint of excitement showing through her shy expression. Celine handed a spatial ring to Edgar. This has a few mana crystals and coins. You can either exchange some for local currency at a merchant guild branch or any official exchanger, or just trade with these. I doubt any shop will refuse mana crystals. Try not to get scammed though. Edgar rolled his eyes. They wouldn't dare. Helena gently smiled. I will make sure that we won't get scammed, mistress. With that, Eldrick and Celine entered the inn, disappearing inside as the others turned and walked down the main street of BrightGate. The city was bustling even in the evening. The streets were paved with polished stone, reflecting the golden glow of the setting sun. Merchants shouted out deals from different colorful stalls, glowing lanterns lit up every storefront, and the air carried the mixed aroma of spices, roasted meat, and fresh fruit. "Welcome to BrightGate, the city of trade and gold," Edgar said with mock pride, sweeping an arm theatrically. "We've got overpriced shit, suspicious street food capable of poisoning even dragons, and more shouting than an auction house." Orion chuckled. "So basically, a decent place to burn money." "Exactly. But why have I not seen any of the other races that I heard about?" Orion asked with a hint of excitement. Even he couldn't wait to see some of the races of his past fantasy: fox girls, cat girls, elves, and many more. Helena chuckled. "Looks like young master can't wait to see some of those races." Orion nodded without any shame. "Of course, I'm quite interested since I have never seen anyone of a different race." Helena raised an eyebrow but soon let out a soft chuckle. "Oh, I'm sure you have seen people of other races." Orion looked at her in confusion. "Anyways, other races and humans have different paths to enter the city. You can find the other races on the other side of this market," she quickly told him. Edgar nodded. "Some of them have even opened their own shops." He motioned to a goblin at a far distance. "See those greedy fucks? Even they opened their own shops." Can I get a goblin slayer title in this world?" Orion's first thought after looking at the ugly midgets was to kill them. "Master, are you having racist thoughts?" Rena questioningly asked. "Huh? No, why would I?" Orion quickly denied. "Well," she put a finger on her chin and tilted her head, "your gaze was quite more intense than normal." Edgar and Helena looked at him. "Was it?" I can't tell." Edgar shook his head. "But most don't like those greedy little green bastards. And they also live away from the other races. The only time they will come out of their caves is to trade or if they smell some profit. So other races just leave them alone." The group chatted while looking at the group of goblins. There were around 4 to 5 goblins in a shop showing their wares to others. Quite a few people were interested in them since goblins were famous for selling things for cheap. However, the catch was that they never took guarantee if their product was genuine or not. So the majority of the time, they earn profit by selling fakes. Orion shook his head and headed deeper into the market. They passed by a few outdoor performers, one balancing on glowing mana threads, another playing a flute that summoned floating water balls to dance with the music. Crowds surrounded them, tossing coins into baskets with impressed whistles and claps. "Wow," Fiora murmured, her eyes sparkling as she watched a water ball juggler toss floating spheres with decent skill. "You want to try that too?" Orion teased. She shook her head quickly, blushing. "And no. I mean, maybe, later." Rena chuckled looking at how easily Orion started to tease Fiora. He smiled as they continued to move forward. And soon, they stopped by a magic equipment shop. The shopkeeper, an old dwarf with an aged appearance and sharp eyes, looked at both Edgar and Helena. Feeling pressure from their mere presence, his attitude became respectful. Orion glanced at a sleek pair of gloves in the display case, lined with mana-conductive runes, labeled Tier 2, flame-channeling gloves. "How much?" he asked. 70 lesser-grade mana crystals, but I can lower it to 60 for this fine young master," the dwarf said, feeling that this group of people might buy some stuff. Edgar leaned over and muttered, "This grade and quality of treasure isn't worthy of you, young master." Orion calmly nodded. "We're just browsing for now. If I do find something interesting, then I will call you over." The dwarf disappointedly shook his head and went back to sit behind the counter. He realized the goods in his small shop weren't enough to move the hearts of this group of people. Orion and the others quickly took a look around the shop. Even Fiora and Rena didn't find anything of interest, so they quickly left. From there, they stopped at a potion shop, a charm vendor, and even a strange stall selling tamed spirit insects, glowing little bugs that could supposedly guide the lost. Rena bought a small enchanted mirror that changed its frame based on mood. Fiora found a cute spirit beast plushie enchanted with basic fire spells to provide warmth, and when hugged, it generated cozy heat. As they strolled down the final market street, a group of adventurers passed by in battered armor, bloodstains, and all. They looked at Edgar and paused some distance away before quickly changing their direction. One of them seemed to murmur something along the lines of, "Why is this butcher here?" Orion raised an eye looking at the running group. "You knew them?" he asked. Edgar stroked his beard. They might be my admirers when I was young. They probably got shy and ran away." Sar the novelfire.net ** website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Orion rolled his eyes at him but didn't pry further. Helena shook her head as she knew how famous he was in his younger years and what reputation he had. They finally ended up in front of a small noodle stall where hearty aroma wafted out. "You kids hungry?" Edgar asked. "I could eat," Rena said. Fiora shyly nodded. "Then sit," Helena smiled softly. "My treat." They ordered 5 bowls of piping hot mana-infused noodles. The broth was rich, the meat tender, and the spice just enough to make the girls sweat slightly. While Orion, with his half-draconic body, gulped down all the noodles while asking for more. "Okay, I'm officially a fan of this place," he mumbled between bites. Fiora smiled, gently wiping a bit of soup from the corner of his mouth with her sleeve, only to freeze after realizing what she had done. Rena blinked, stared for a moment, then looked away. "Humph." Orion just kept slurping the noodles, pretending not to notice anything. By the time they finished and started heading back, the stars had come out and the city had taken on a calmer charm. Lanterns floated in the sky, magic ones, slowly drifting over the buildings like fireflies to illuminate the darkness. "This was kinda nice," Orion quietly said. "You'll miss this freedom once we reach the academy," Edgar said, hands behind his back. "I know," he replied, looking up at the floating lights. "That's why I'm enjoying every second." Helena shook her head. "Stop trying to scare young master, we are not enlisting him in the kingdom's army." The group laughed while heading back towards the inn. Soon, they reached the inn. Entering inside, they saw Eldrick and Celine sitting at a table, talking. Eldrick noticed their arrival and smiled. "Took you lot long enough. Have you had your fun?" Of course, Orion smiled and came in front of him. "This city is really something, but it's a pity I couldn't find what I was looking for." He shook his head with pity. Eldrick raised an eyebrow. "Oh? You didn't find it here? What is it?" Celine also turned towards him, wondering the same thing. Rena turned her face to the side. "Probably elves or fox girls." Eldrick laughed out loud just as he heard that. "Ha ha ha ha, so it was just that? Elves are reclusive by nature. And you won't find fox people easily since each and every one of them is a master at illusion and charm magic. You probably met a few but didn't recognize them." Orion still shook his head. "I don't think there are any fox people in this city. It would be ridiculous if they could escape from my dragon instinct. Though it may be suppressed currently, finding out a fox folk shouldn't be hard." Eldrick stroked his beard. Then it is possible that the fox people went back to their race area for something? They are quite secretive and don't mingle much with other races as well. Who knows? Orion exhaled a sigh and took a seat, while others also finally sat down. Rena and Fiora still sat down on either side of Orion. Celine giggled, looking at the 3 of them, while Eldrick and the others ignored them and simply ordered their food. Orion didn't mind the situation one bit and simply enjoyed his leisure day ending. Soon, they finished eating while chatting and headed for their individual rooms. Orion directly dropped on the bed, feeling the soft mattress graze his cheeks. Today was an exciting day," he muttered before closing his eyes. Sunlight filtered in through the curtains as a new day began. Orion's eyes fluttered open. MMHH. He slowly rose and sat upright on the bed. Good morning, Lou. He paused mid-sentence, remembering that she was still undergoing an update. Shaking his head, he thought, getting used to her absence is quite hard. Without wasting further time, he went ahead to get fresh and take a bath. Good morning, lad, Eldrick softly said, seeing Orion descending from the stairs. The others greeted him one after another. Orion nodded and smiled. Good morning, everyone. He came down and sat beside the others. They ordered breakfast while talking about last night. While waiting for food, Orion asked, Grandpa, which city are we going to this time? You said we will be visiting 2 cities, right? Edgar stroked his beard and nodded his head. The fuck is with these old people stroking their beard? Can't they goddamn talk without doing that for once? Orion inwardly muttered. Knowing where you live is quite important, Edgar softly began. Since you already saw the bright side of this kingdom, next you will see the dark side. We will be traveling towards Neruthal. Orion raised an eyebrow. Ruined City Neruthal? Isn't that the place which was destroyed during one of the wars with demons? Eldrick nodded solemnly. Yes. Once a thriving fortress city, now reduced to rubble and a haunted ruin. It was one of the key frontline cities of this kingdom during the second invasion by the demons years ago. Helena spoke softly, her tone remorseful. Even now, it's said to be haunted. Spirit residue lingers, and corrupted beasts roam the outskirts. But its ruins hold history, and the struggle of us. So, are we going there so I can gain experience? Orion asked, looking at Eldrick. Doesn't sound like a tourist spot. Eldrick took a sip of his juice before responding, yes, it would be beneficial for you if you could feel their power for yourself first before entering the academy. After all, our ultimate enemies are the damned demons. Orion looked down at the water cup in front of him. Who is Viper? Eldrick's gaze hardened. One of the 72 demon kings. And the one who is fighting with us for control of this continent. So far, all her attempts have been unsuccessful, but each time she comes back, her army gets stronger. We don't know if all of us can fight her off. Orion took a deep breath. Did the true dragons ever join the war? Eldrick chuckled and shook his head. How can those high and mighty beings care about some poor mortals like us? It's already good enough that they don't come here to cause trouble often. He took a deep breath and clenched his fist. Looks like I need to get their asses to work, later. Anyways, enough about this. Let's eat and take off. We should reach there by tomorrow morning if we hurry up, Eldrick said, looking at the approaching food. Orion took a deep breath and shook away the useless thoughts. His priority right now was to reach the academy and form his affinity rune. The group continued traveling throughout the day, crossing rivers and villages while talking and laughing. They stopped at a place to eat lunch together as well, before quickly leaving on their journey again. As the Neruthal city came closer and closer, the atmosphere started to turn somber and quiet. Orion looked out at the road and realized that fewer and fewer pedestrians were walking in that direction. Looks like the aftermath of that battle was worse than what I read, he thought. They passed by a few quiet villages until only the ruins of villages started to appear in their line of sight. It should still have been morning, birds chirping, insects making noises. However, something along the way had changed quietly, before Orion and the others could recognize. Felt something different? Eldrick asked, looking at Orion with a half-smile. Orion focused on his surroundings. No. I don't hear any. His eyes slightly widened as he realized, all the noises are gone. Exactly. No birds, no wind, no sign of life. Eldrick heaved a deep sigh. Those demonic bastards did this here. Not leaving a sign of life. Orion looked out of the window, and he could still see green trees in the surroundings. Then how come there are still these alive trees? The kingdom asked for help from the Holy Church. Those with the light affinity can purify the darkness of the demons, he explained while looking at the lush greenery outside. Even though the church priests did their best and even restored the majority of this place, signs of life are still missing. Even if we bring insects, animals, or birds, they would either die after a while or just run away. The kingdom asked for advice from the Holy Church again, but all they said was that it would take time for this place to heal naturally. He finished saying in one breath. Celine placed a hand on his shoulder. We tried to purify this place ourselves, but we couldn't come up with anything. The dead bodies of demons and humans once filled this place. Maybe this issue rose from that time. Orion became silent, focusing on Eldric's words. Darkness element brings corruption? Is my darkness element the same? But I thought darkness was the absence of light, not the corruption of everything else. Eldric noticed Orion's deep contemplation ever since he mentioned darkness. He decided to expand on it. The darkness element is the opposite of light. Where one purifies, the other corrupts. The demons are mostly born with dual elements, with one being the darkness and the other being one of the other elements. They corrupt the natural element with their darkness and make a fused demonic element, abyssal flames, nether water, hell wind, etc. But this doesn't give them that big of a boost against normal elements. It gives them a corrupting power which eats away at the mana of their opponents. That's why fighting with them always leads to a Pyrrhic victory. Orion looked at Eldric in surprise. No wonder I didn't find many details about the darkness element in the library. It's something like a forbidden element to the humans. Are there any darkness affinity users in this kingdom? He asked, ignoring the demons for a second. Eldric raised an eyebrow. Brat, you aren't. Then his gaze landed on Rena and Fiora, who were looking at him curiously. He held back on asking whether Orion wanted to master the darkness element as well. Yes, there are darkness element users in our world as well. But they are mostly the outcasts of society, as the darkness element corrupts them, too. There are only two ends for them, either getting killed by their own darkness or being hunted down by those they offended. Celine took over, understanding Orion's curiosity. It's not that they are hunted on sight, she sighed, but most don't want to associate with darkness affinity users, since they are very volatile. What about light element? Since both are the polar opposite of each other, shouldn't light also affect the mentality of practitioners? Albeit not to the same type as darkness, but it should still affect them, right? He asked, wondering about the workings of these two weird elements. Eldric nodded in approval. It's good that you caught on so quickly, and the answer to your question is yes. Light element also affects the user. However, it doesn't affect them like darkness. It only amplifies the positive traits of users, unlike darkness, which amplifies the negative traits. Orion frowned. He didn't like this. He didn't like this one bit, that both Eldric and Celine hadn't told him about this before. Celine gently patted his head. We didn't tell you about this before because we wanted you to make your own choice once you reach the academy and learn more about this stuff. That's why I didn't give you the affinity rune book. His expression eased slightly after hearing Celine's explanation. He asked, is there any way to break free from the element's influence? Eldric shrugged. You know, all elements subtly affect us, or rather, they are the embodiment of our emotions, so they perfectly align with our true selves. That's why those with fire element have fiery personalities while those with the water element have calm personalities. Now you only have a single choice, your will needs to be strong enough to ignore the element's influence, since your case is rather special. He finished saying, looking deeply at Orion, who fell silent at his words. The remaining resentment in his heart dissipated as he thought, can light or darkness corrupt a true dragon emperor? Fuck it. I'll just master both elements and create a balance between them. He decided and felt a burden lifting from his shoulders. Fiora and Rena looked at each other. They finally realized that Orion had the light element. They couldn't hide the shock and a hint of pride in their eyes. After all, having the light element is considered holy and divine in their world. Only the righteous people with pure hearts can awaken with light element. That just proved the master they were serving was the correct one. Alas, if they knew he also had darkness affinity, then who knows what they would have done? They continued chatting while their destination neared. The carriage grew silent as after a while, Lucan finally stopped the carriage and dismounted it. This is as far as we can go, boss. We would need to head the rest of the way on foot, he said, gesturing at the dark zone ahead. It was some distance away from the outskirts of the city. Eldrick and the others dismounted the carriage. Looking around, they saw an empty outpost with dark bloodstains. Orion came forward and read the words written at the outpost, Neruthal City's outpost. So, we are finally here, he said, looking at the burnt banners hanging on top of the outpost. Celine nodded her head. Yes, this is the outpost. From here on starts the Neruthal City. Search *the Nefire.at website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Lucan, you stay here and tend to the horses with Edgar. Helena, Celine, and I will take care of the kids, Eldrick said before turning back toward the post where Orion and the others were looking. It was a prosperous city in its heyday. Now it's just ruins. He shook his head and began walking toward the city. The others looked at each other before following after him. Orion, on the other hand, felt something different after arriving here. Initially, he thought he would feel repulsion or discomfort after coming here, but strangely, he felt none of that. Instead, it felt to him the same as when he was on the way here or when he was at the city. His mind still remained calm like a still well. But he could now perceive darkness more closely and clearly. 6 demon generals attacked this place together with their unending army of lesser demons, Eldrick said, walking toward the city gates. All around, there was no sign of vegetation. Neither were there other treasure hunters or humans. All seemed to avoid this area on purpose as this place served no purpose other than making everyone uncomfortable. The road was cracked all over the place, weapons lay on the ground, rusted and broken. Fiora looked at everything with slight fear, walking closer to Orion. Rena's lips twitched as she came to his other side, not wanting to miss out on this good stuff. While Orion didn't focus on them, as he was trying to understand the darkness element more thoroughly. It corrupted the very core of other elements, nearly turning them into something else, something sinister. The king dispatched a lot of his manpower to finally push back the demon army, greatly weakening the kingdom's vitality. But it was worth it in the end, as the surrounding kingdoms helped Thunder Peak remain stable, Celine lightly said, looking at the dark surroundings with sadness as they reached below the city gates. Was it due to the other races? Were they eyeing our kingdom? Orion softly asked. Eldrick proudly nodded, feeling a little happy that his grandson caught this part so quickly. While Fiora tilted her head. Why, though? Aren't demons supposed to be the common enemy? Shouldn't we first take care of them before fighting among ourselves? Celine gently pinched her cheek. People are selfish, Fiora. Especially some races which are infamous for making a fortune during times of war, like the goblin race. So you can never be too careful against outsiders. It was the surrounding human kingdoms and the empire that helped this kingdom. Fiora and Rena silently nodded their heads, once again remembering that no one was truly their own in this wild world. Orion listened quietly to the history of this place. He saw dried blood all over, beast bones, and human remains scattered all around. Not even a proper burial, or are these the remains of demons? There might be some humanoid in them, he thought, walking through the ruined city gates. Half of its structure was destroyed, while the other half was covered with battle marks and blood. It's been a while since I came here, and every time I come, only bad memories surface in my mind, Eldrick shook his head. Orion finally turned his head to look at Eldrick. Have you participated in such wars before, Grandpa? Eldrick solemnly nodded his head, not acting prideful or anything this time around. I have fought more battles than I would like to tell. And every single one of them was a gruesome one. Except the single one where we had the help of Sir Dawn. A hint of respect appeared in Eldrick's gaze as he uttered the name. Dawn? Orion tilted his head, curious. Helena interrupted softly, tell him about Sir Dawn later. For now, he should look around here, to understand completely why humans can never live in peace with demons, as well as what demons do with humans. Orion paused and nodded, walking at the front as they entered the city. Looking inside, all the buildings were destroyed, leaving rubble and shattered dreams all over. He softly brushed his hand against the walls of a building, feeling the brownish bloodstains all over the wall. After such a long time, he couldn't even tell if the blood was of humans or demons. Fiora and Rena walked one step behind him, observing both him and the surroundings closely. Death. Destruction. Decay. Sadness. Is this all the demons bring wherever they go? Orion quietly thought to himself, looking at the once bustling city. The roads were wide enough for multiple horse carriages to travel at once, yet such huge roads now seemed haunted with dried blood all over the place. He continued to travel from one place to another, seeing the remains of families, couples, kids, pets, among others. His heart slowly grew cold as he finally felt what the demons had done to this place. Eldrick, Celine, and Helena quietly followed behind him, letting him see and feel all that the city had to offer. Soon after, Orion reached the central market, where large statues lay broken, shattered during the war. Who are they? He softly muttered. The city lord, clan masters, and those who made great achievements for this city. These statues are the highest honors given to those who made achievements here. But alas, not everything can be preserved from the indifferent hand of fate, Eldrick said while looking at the statues. Orion took a deep breath and continued moving forward, looking around the statues, finding nothing more than a few shattered weapons. Fiora and Rena clenched their hands, their eyes welling up with tears as they imagined the horrors the people of this city had to go through back in the day. Search *thennovelier.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. The group moved toward the center of the city, where the city lord's mansion was located. Yet looking from afar, they could see it was nothing more than a mountain of shattered rubble. The demons laid waste wherever they moved. It was no surprise that this entire city had been razed to the ground. Orion stood still in the center of all this destruction, taking in all the death and destruction from his surroundings. He realized that he didn't like this city as much as he thought in the beginning. He might not be uncomfortable due to the darkness element here, but the tragic history of this place moved his heart. Yet there was nothing he could do, for he knew he was far too weak. Too weak to do anything other than die pathetically. Demons. He murmured internally. Rena looked toward the still body of Orion. Taking a deep breath, she took a step forward and grabbed his hand tightly. Orion didn't say anything and quietly contemplated what had transpired here. Eldrick and the others left him to himself, letting him feel for himself what the real world was. They knew sheltering him would only be detrimental to his growth. And they didn't want what happened with Lucian to happen with Orion as well. After a while, Eldrick slowly said, "You understood what I meant when I said demons and humans can't live together? This is merely one of the smaller areas where the war affected. Those truly devastated regions are much, much worse than this. And the situation was dozens of times worse than what it seems right now." He exhaled an exhausted sigh. Celine came beside him and placed her hand gently on his shoulder without saying a word. Fiora felt sad looking at Orion, sensing his worsening mood. She quietly stepped forward and gently held his hand. Maybe the world really isn't as good of a place to live as we all are believed to think. But, if there are places where people live in misery, then there are places where people live happily. We can't only focus on the negatives, Celine softly added, looking toward Orion. He finally took a deep breath and tightened his grip. I'm overthinking it, he softly said, letting go of all thoughts of demons and war and only focusing on what was in front of him. The darkness element, which was active inside his sea of consciousness, began to recede like a tide, merging back with the affinity orb. His heart instantly felt lighter as the influence of the darkness element faded from his mind. Elements are terrifying, he silently thought. Letting go of Rena and Fiora's hands, he turned around. Rena and Fiora stepped back, letting him speak his mind. "You're right, Grandma. We can't just focus on how the world suffers, we also need to look at the happy and bustling places. BrightGate is a good example of that." He smiled softly, finally looking past the misery of this place. Eldrick finally smiled after arriving at this place. Good, I didn't misjudge you. See, Celine? I told you he could take this much. Celine heaved a sigh of relief, smiling helplessly. I didn't want him to face so much so early. He has only started to learn about this for like 2 months. Eldrick stepped forward and proudly patted Orion's shoulder. Good. Remember your own words. No matter what you face, or no matter what happens, there is always somewhere in this world where light shines. You just need to find that place. Orion gently nodded. I won't forget my own words, Grandpa. I now know why I need to get stronger, and I also know what I want to do. Eldrick raised an eyebrow, curious. What do you want to do? Kill the demons? Orion shook his head. I want to explore this world. To know what it has to offer in this lifetime, otherwise it would be a pity. To live such a life and never explore your own world, that'd be a shame. Eldrick paused, his expression turning melancholic. If that is your wish. Celine looked at Orion with a faint hint of worry. Oh Orion, are you sure about this? You're still, why young? Orion smiled emphatically. Don't worry. I won't go anywhere until I'm strong enough to guarantee my safety. He gestured for both of them to calm down. Helena looked at all of this calmly, feeling a lump forming in her throat. It had been far too long since she had seen her master and mistress being this proud and happy about someone since the passing of their son. Rena and Fiora, on the other hand, looked at Orion with admiration. They didn't fully understand what went through his head due to their limited worldview. But looking at how proud Eldrick was of him, they felt happy from the bottom of their hearts. Just as Orion was about to say something flashed in his mind. Limitless system, emergency core protocol awakening, partial access granted. Master. Why do I feel like I missed something really important? 3. Orion's face formed a gentle smile. Her voice, warm, familiar, and slightly pouty, soothed something inside him. His heart felt lighter. Yet he couldn't allow her to see him like this. Ugh, not again. It's only been 3 days. Go back to sleep. No. Don't wanna, system's still updating but my heart hurts. Xianxia the novelfire.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Emergency core protocol has verified the host's emotional state. No cosmic threat detected. Stabilization achieved. Disabling core access to protect sentient subsystem integrity. Limitless core entering safe sleep mode. Master better not be crying without me. Connection terminated. Orion softly exhaled, his smile fading, but the warmth lingering. Idiot, but a good idiot. Their exchange took a split second, before his gaze returned to normal and looked toward the others. Let's head out now. Let the people of this place rest, he softly said, looking at the shattered remains of the statues one last time. The others nodded and began walking back toward the carriage. Fiora and Rena walked just behind Orion, looking at his back. Who? Lucan stretched his back and asked, what do you think? Why did Master want to take young Master to this godforsaken place where even birds don't shit? Edgar stroked his beard. It's clear as day. He wanted to see if young Master is ready for this world or not. Once he starts training, it's inevitable for him to come into contact with those damned demons. This is quite a good place for a beginner to start. Lucan's lips twitched. For a beginner? This is a fucking war site. A good place for a beginner would have been if Master took young Master to fight a beast after he formed his awakening rune. Edgar waved his hand. That's for normal people, not geniuses at the level of young Master. Just wait and see, his growth will surprise you. Lucan looked at Edgar suspiciously. You do know I've seen the geniuses of even the empires, right? Are you sure a young man whom Master found in the woods can surpass those monsters? Edgar mysteriously smiled. Just wait and, they are back. His eyes lit up as he saw the group coming. He focused his gaze and looked toward Orion. His face still had that calm smile, yet there seemed to be a sense of openness that wasn't present before. Edgar smiled and went up to Eldrick. Congratulations, Master. Looks like you were right about young Master. Eldrick proudly smiled. Of course. When am I ever wrong? Now, let's go. We should reach the capital city in around 4 days. Lucan prepared their carriage as they all boarded it without delay. No one wanted to stay at such a gloomy place for too long. Orion entered the carriage at the end and sat between Rena and Fiora. Everyone sat in silence, letting the atmosphere calm down gradually. Darkness. Orion inwardly thought. He had felt it far too clearly, the element wasn't evil inherently. It was just its nature to corrode other elements with itself, same as light. But that doesn't make light good or darkness bad. In the end, it all comes down to the users of said elements. My understanding of darkness has greatly increased this time. I can probably make the awakening rune, but I need to learn the runic language for that. In the end, I need to wait. He inwardly shook his head and closed his eyes. The carriage changed its direction and started heading toward the capital. Lucan sat at the front, carelessly holding the reins. The group continued moving, stopping at night to have dinner before moving again in the morning. They didn't head to another city as Eldrick had already achieved his purpose of visiting those 2 cities. Visiting any more would needlessly delay their journey at this point. Moreover, doing anything more for Orion at this point would only be detrimental since he had just experienced his first real-life demonic experience. Come on. Orion inwardly muttered, lying inside his tent as he saw the countdown of the system slowly reaching 0. The group was once again camping in the night, and Fiora, Rena, and Orion were inside one tent. By now, both Fiora and Rena had gone to sleep after chatting with Orion. He lay alone at a side, looking at the ticking time on which only a few seconds were remaining. 7 seconds. His eyes filled with anticipation as he looked at the timer. He couldn't wait for Lumi to come back, and the new system features. Ding. Limitless.exe is back online. System core, Lumi has awakened, Omega. A soft, familiar voice echoed through Orion's sea of consciousness with a mix of sleepiness and joy. cthnafire.at website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. New, finally. System reboot complete, greater than over equal to less than over equal to. Lumi's voice cracked slightly, like she was stretching after a long nap. Master, I'm back hack. Did you miss me? Of course you did. Look at you staring at the timer. Orion couldn't stop the small smile from forming on his lips. His heart genuinely felt lighter. Same, as ever. You're loud, he replied inwardly in a playful tone. Eh? That's all I get? Not even a welcome hug? Or of Lumi-chan, I missed you so much. Her voice pouted dramatically. You threw me away the last time I came online as well. Do you really hate me so much? I never said that I hated you, he silently said. Does that mean Master loves Lumi? Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves. I also didn't say that. He inwardly chuckled. Humph. I will get you one of these days. Anyway. Allow me to announce, drumroll please. Limitless System v3, fully installed. New feature unlocked. 1. Chronicle of Trials, issue quests to Master based on his fate and world events. 2. The Forgotten Archive, unlock hidden history, ancient races, and relic knowledge by encountering key triggers. Orion frowned, looking at the first new feature. Quests? Will I be forced to do quests that I don't want to? Or will there be penalties for not doing them? Master can choose to accept or reject the missions. And there will be no penalties for rejecting or failing a quest. However, there will be consequences that might affect you directly, indirectly, or not at all. Orion's frown deepened. He contemplated this for a bit before exhaling a sigh. Then what about the rewards? There should be something for completing the missions, right? Of course, greater than over equal to 4 all less than over equal to, Master will get system points for completing missions. Orion speechlessly looked at the system prompt. Do you want me to gamble so bad? Worry not, Master. For the new update has brought more ways for you to use SP. This instantly piqued Orion's interest. Oh? Tell me about them. Master can now use SP to expand the inventory. For only 900 SP, host can get 90 more inventory slots. Oh? Can I buy a single inventory slot for 10 SP? He immediately asked. Sorry Master, but it's only available for bulk purchase. Equal to or succeeds equal to or precedes. Alright. Is there any other way to use it, or is it only for expanding inventory? He asked. There is another way, of course, Master. You will need SP to use the second new feature, the Forgotten Archive. Orion looked at the new feature again, wondering what it really meant. Do you know more about this feature? What's forgotten, and why is it trying to show that to me? I don't know, Master. It's the work of your Mark of Fate. That thing is beyond my control, for now. For now, huh? Well, forget about it then. Do you know anything about thrones? He asked, what had been on his mind for the past few days. Thrones? What do you mean, Master? I had this weird dream. It had tall, majestic pillars, and on top of those pillars were thrones. He continued to narrate his entire dream to Lumi, hoping for her to explain something. But he knew it was futile, as she only knew as much as he did. I'm sorry Master, I didn't find any details regarding thrones in your inheritance, and neither do I know about it. Lumi softly said with a slightly sad voice. Don't worry about it. Maybe I just wanted someone to share my dream with. Orion softly shook his head and decided to put the matter to rest until he got further clues. Is there anything more I should know about the update? He asked, feeling sleepy. Nothing important, Master. Then go back to sleep, he playfully said. No. Never again. She declared proudly. From now on, Lumi is fully online, fully functional, and ready to support you emotionally, spiritually, metaphysically, and in every other way, / omega / / Orion's lips twitched as he heard Lumi's reply. He decided to ignore her and closed his eyes to sleep peacefully. Master, don't ignore me. Let me sleep. We need to travel tomorrow for the capital. Now that you dropped this bombshell of a new feature on my head, who knows when a new quest will be triggered, he inwardly said. New. Good night. Fiora and Rena woke up before Orion early in the morning. Looking around, they sleepily fixed the tent before glancing at Orion. Slowly, their sleepiness went away as Rena softly whispered to Fiora, don't you think he seems lighthearted now? Fiora quickly nodded her head a couple of times. All this time there was this weird sense of heaviness coming from him. But now, he seems peaceful. They both continued to stare at him for a bit more. Maybe it's because he is sleeping? Rena said without confidence. Fiora tilted her head but also couldn't come to a conclusion. Anyways, let's go out and help out with cooking. We gotta learn how to cook top-tier food for Master, Rena said before standing up. Fiora quickly followed her out of the tent. Orion woke up after a while. He stretched his upper body. Good morning, Lumi, he softly said. Good morning, Master. He softly smiled, seeing how energetic Lumi was first thing in the morning. Standing up, he walked out of the tent, looking at everyone sitting beside the campfire while chatting. Good morning, lad. Were you exhausted last night that you slept so long? Eldrick winked at him and asked. Orion's lips twitched. I was awake till late at night because I couldn't sleep. Celine looked at him worriedly. Do you have some issue, dear? Tell me and I will fix it if it's within my capabilities. Orion quickly shook his head. It's nothing serious, Grandma. I was just excited about reaching the capital today. Celine heaved a sigh of relief. So it was this. Edgar chuckled. You won't be disappointed in Stormspire, young master. It's absolutely a top-tier city even among empires. And the view there is just on a whole other level. Orion walked toward them and sat down. Have you been to the capital, Uncle Edgar? Edgar stroked his beard. Of course. It's truly one of a kind. You better prepare your heart to not pass out from shock after seeing it. Orion pretended to stroke his non-existent beard. I see. Looks like Uncle Edgar passed away from shock the first time he went to visit the capital. Edgar's lips twitched, hearing Orion's words, just wait and see how magnificent the capital is. He quickly wrapped up the conversation. He didn't deny it, heh. Orion thought to himself in amusement. We also have quite a few acquaintances over in the capital, Celine added. They can help you out if you need anything. Orion looked at her. Who are they? Oh, you will know once you meet them. Eldrick quickly interrupted Celine and said with a mysterious smile. Orion inwardly chuckled, looking at him. Very well then. They continued chatting while eating food. Soon after, they set off again. Orion couldn't wait to see how the capital would look. Edgar had really hyped him up for this. The group traveled for the entire day, traversing the silent terrain towards a particular place near the capital. This was the territory of a duke, House Blackwell. Orion saw quite a few shadow element users along the way, and some local people buying stuff for occult arts. Grandpa. What's this dukedom? Who controls it? He curiously asked while looking out at a traveling merchant. They had traveled through a few cities without stopping in House Blackwell's dukedom. Eldrick carelessly looked out of the carriage. Blackwell, it's quite an interesting dukedom. In their territory, they mostly practice shadow element, while some are born with dual affinity for lightning and shadow. Orion tilted his head. What's the difference between thunder and lightning? I have heard about both, but I thought thunder is merely the sound that follows after lightning? Eldrick chuckled. It's the same for mages, they just like to call themselves thunder mages because it sounds cool. In reality, it's the lightning element and not the thunder element. Just look at me, I call myself a thunder mage because that's how people call me. No point in correcting everyone. A world full of idiots. He quietly thought. Anyways, back to the topic. Blackwell is also famous for their occult activities. But the royal household doesn't care about that as long as they are loyal to Thunder Peak Kingdom, Eldrick finished saying. Orion rubbed his chin. So, have they done anything recently that would suggest their loyalty is shifting? Eldrick shook his head. No, they are quite loyal to our kingdom. That's why they are allowed to do these things, and the kingdom doesn't meddle much in their affairs. So who is the duke here? He asked again. Not duke, but duchess. Eldrick chuckled and continued, Duchess Asara Blackwell rules the House of Blackwell alone. She took the reins after her father passed away and has been in control ever since. Celine looked at Orion and said, at first, all the noble households thought that the decline of Blackwell would start with Asara. She softly chuckled, however, that young lass proved everyone wrong and consolidated the position of House Blackwell even further in this kingdom. Orion nodded with respect. Truly a woman worthy of respect. So does the House Blackwell specialize in lightning and shadow element? Eldrick laughed out loud. That's what outsiders would think. However, House Blackwell members are actually experts in mental manipulation, illusions, and lightning-based soul arts. They are actual practitioners of spirit arts who have learned to integrate lightning into their spirit techniques. Orion raised an eyebrow. We can fuse elemental mana in spirit arts and attack the soul directly with it? Celine nodded her head. Of course, dear. The applications of mana are limitless, one just needs to have an active imagination. He nodded his head in agreement. Looks like I will meet with the members of House Blackwell in the academy. Celine's eyes twinkled. Do you remember when I told you about how the heir of the Blackwell family tried to enter the Thunderhall Academy's forbidden archives? Asara changed the heir after that. The new heiress is NYSS Blackwell. Maybe you will get along well, or not with her. Why does she seem to be having so much fun? Orion thought to himself, looking at the twinkling eyes of Celine. Well, we will see about that once I join the academy. Orion didn't want to dwell more on the topic and gave a short reply. Celine smiled lightly and didn't continue on the topic. Fiora and Rena glanced at each other when Celine brought up NYSS, but they didn't say anything. Search * the novel, Heir. At website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. The group left the dukedom and got on the road towards the royal capital. They could visibly see that the number of people and caravans had increased. Even the number of different species had increased. Orion spotted many different species making their way over to the capital city: foxkin, wolfkin, lionkin, catkin, dwarves, goblins, wood elves, gnomes, lamia, and other species were frequently spotted on the road. He looked at all of this with fascination. He didn't expect that this world would hold so many races, despite reading about them in the library. It's truly a fantasy world, he inwardly thought. Master, any species you took a liking to yet? Yes, of course. I'm liking all what I'm seeing, he replied without hesitation. May I suggest, Master? You should first look for a foxkin for your harem. They are the best at management and are one of the most intelligent species, greater than over equal to 4 all less than over equal to. Orion shook his head. Stop trying to match me with others. I can't enter a relationship just yet. Why? Orion thoughtfully looked at Eldrick and Celine from the corner of his eyes. Maybe because I'm fucking 2 months old? But that aside, I first need to build a status for myself. I can't just rely on grandpa and grandma. Because if I don't have worth of my own, then I can forget about forming a harem. I guess that's true. You will have trouble later forming a harem if you found one member right now. Complications can rise then. He inwardly shook his head. Precisely. That's why I'm not advancing with Fiora and Rena. Otherwise, you think I couldn't have already claimed them? My wives can't be just normal women as well. They need to be the best at their fields, even if I have to train them myself. So for that, I first need to make myself the best in that field. You really thought this out, Master. Sigma, degree. He inwardly chuckled, seeing how shocked Lumi was. Anyways, show me my status screen. Been over a week since I saw that. Limitless system V3, Lumi. Host, Orion Hellstorm, Primus Zalzarion Draconis. Title, Perfect Being, Limit Breaker, Heir of 2 Thrones. Age, 1/9000, Soul Age, 20. Bloodline, Human Emperor, Thunder Dragon Emperor, Fire Dragon Emperor. Physique, Human Emperor's Constitution, Fire Dragon Emperor's Constitution, Thunder Dragon Emperor's Constitution. Soul, Human Emperor's Soul, Fire Dragon Emperor's Soul, Thunder Dragon Emperor's Soul. Rank, Awakened/Hatchling. Mana channels, 9 primal mana channels, universally adaptable conduits capable of channeling all known energy forms. Passive abilities. Mark of Fate. Fire Affinity, Tier 7. Thunder Affinity, Tier 7. All other elemental affinities, Tier 6. Draconic Instinct, Suppressed. Dragon's Might. Supreme Mental Endurance. Active abilities. Eye of Revelation, Appraisal and Bloodline Analysis. Fire Dragon's Breath. Thunder Dragon's Breath. Treasures. Soulpiercer Sword, Bound to Soul. Bonesteel Sword, High-Grade Treasure. Inventory, 8 out of 10. Damaged World Tree Seed. Strange Stone. Minus 600 tons of meat. Bonesteel Sword, High-Grade Treasure. Worn-out Boots, Common Grade. Beast for Ball, Common Grade. Torn Beast Skin, Common Grade. Moonberry X9 983, Common Grade. Gambling, 11 draws used, 7 SP remaining. Chronicle of Trials, 0 quests. The Forgotten Archive. Orion glanced at the system screen quickly. New title, Child of 2 Thrones. Reading the title reminded him of his dream. I added the title after you recounted the dream to me, Master. Though there is no title effect since I'm not sure what it is. So I can gain titles, but those can be useless as well? Well, that's not bad. I like to see some cool titles for myself as well. Heir of 2 thrones rings sweet bells in my ear. He nodded his head with a smile. They continued chatting while moving. Whoa, is that the capital? Rena exclaimed, looking out of the window. Orion leaned forward slightly and squinted into the distance. Even from here, the sight stole his breath away. From his carriage, the entire city looked like a colossal fortress carved out of thunderstones and divine metals. Its tall towers spiraled into the skies, crowned by a swirling mass of electric mist. At the very center of the massive city, the royal citadel floated above the ground atop massive formations with pillars on all 4 sides of it, while the lower city spread outward in shimmering, concentrated rings. They reached the outskirts of the city in the evening so they could see mana lamplights floating all over the city, illuminating the darkness. Stormspire, the royal city. Orion murmured in awe, looking at the breathtaking scene. Legends had it that the royal family of Stormspire was suppressing a sky rift in the middle of the royal citadel. How marvelous. I can't imagine how much time and magic it took to build such a breathtaking city. He inwardly thought, looking at the ring-like structure of the city. The wide roads leading towards the capital were bustling like veins before a beating heart. Merchant caravans carrying goods and treasures, beastkin riding tamed mounts, dwarven engineers transporting heavy mana machines, elven archers guarding shimmering cargo carriages, gnomes selling their own little trinkets to passing adventurers, and mercenary bands wrapped in dark cloaks could be seen everywhere in the distance. In the sky, Orion could see flying beast mounts ridden by aristocrats and other rich merchants, while he also spotted some little pixies delivering letters or just going on their way. Soldiers clad in polished storm steel armor patrolled the roads, checking merchant licenses and ensuring order among the growing crowd. Near the checkpoints, massive mana gates crackled with energy, controlling entry and exit. Everyone could feel a subtle suppression coming from the gates, showing just how impressive the technology of the Thunder Peak Kingdom was. Now this. Orion muttered with a slight smile, this lives up to the hype. He. Isn't it amazing, Master? Greater than over equal to less than over equal to, Stormspire is ranked first among the capitals of the human kingdoms. Lumi excitedly chimed in. You better make a legendary entrance too. Asterisk greater than over equal to less than over equal to. Orion chuckled inwardly, his eyes reflecting the distant, storm-crowned city. Not yet. He leaned back against the seat, watching the distant lightning arcs paint the clouds silver and golden. I have no personal capital to make a legendary entrance, yet. First, I have to carve my name here. Thunderhall Academy is a good start. Celine noticed his quiet look and smiled softly, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. Don't worry, dear. Whatever storms you face in that city, you won't face them alone. And I doubt there will be any unresolvable storm here. Eldrick nodded firmly, and don't be too awed by its size. Remember, even the tallest spires can be struck down if their foundation rots. Moreover, this is not the biggest city in this world. Orion smiled, feeling the gentle warmth from both sides. Yeah, no matter how vast the storm, I won't be withstanding it alone, for now. The carriage wheels continued to roll forward, slowly reaching the city gates. Surreal, isn't it? Eldrick proudly asked. What are you proud of, old man? You didn't build this city, Celine looked at him from the corner of her eyes and asked. Eldrick coughed, I have good relations with this kingdom, so of course I would be proud. Orion chuckled at their banter, this city is truly something else. After visiting BrightGate City, I wasn't expecting the capital city to be so massively better than it. That's what I was hoping for, Eldrick nodded his head, this city is one of the best among all human kingdoms, and it's ranked quite high even if we take into account the cities of human empires. It's no wonder you would be awed by its majesty. Who is the ruling king of Thunder Peak? He curiously asked. Now that they had finally arrived in the royal capital, he wanted to learn more about the royal family. Eldrick stroked his beard. The ruling clan is Stormrend. You will get to know more about them in the academy. They also send their young clan members to the academy. Damn, it's such an elite academy? Orion raised an eyebrow. Until now he thought that the Thunderhall Academy was only an academy for noble houses, but now that the royal family was involved it meant the academy was the real deal. Now he couldn't suppress his excitement to join the academy. Celine softly smiled. You can join the academy whenever you want once we settle down. It's been a while since I and your grandpa came to the capital city. Orion nodded his head quickly. The carriages traveled together with the other merchants and caravans before splitting off. If we can enter sooner then why delay our entry? Eldrick chuckled, looking at the other people's reactions. Orion couldn't help but smile seeing Eldrick having fun. Celine couldn't help but shake her head at his antics, while both Rena and Fiora looked out of the window, seeing the massive city coming closer and closer. Soon, they reached the gates. Orion, Fiora, and Rena all felt a pressure pressing down on them from the gate. Orion raised his head and looked out of the window towards the giant gates. Does the gate have higher pressure on weaker beings? That makes sense. Is it a racial suppression or an all-encompassing suppression? Eldrick waved his hand and released a mana wave, covering all three of them inside the carriage. SAR the novel, Heir.nt website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. The guards at the gate stood up straight, each of them radiating the aura of someone at the 6th tier, while the guard captain at the front exuded the mana of someone at the 7th, or rather ascendant, tier. He took a step forward and respectfully stood in front of the carriage. May I ask who the esteemed sir is? Eldrick didn't waste time and threw out his token towards him. The guard captain caught it and looked closely. His eyes constricted as he quickly bowed, forgive me for my rudeness, please pass from here. He quickly made way for both of the carriages while respectfully handing the token back to Eldrick. Grandpa, what token is that? It seems quite handy, Orion curiously asked. Oh, this is nothing much. You can get it quickly as well if you do something good here. Eldrick waved his hand and threw the token back in his spatial ring. Orion nodded his head and didn't insist to ask more about it, instead eagerly looking at the unraveling scene of the inside of the city. Ding! New quest triggered. Quest name, Fate Unravel I, Bind of Fate. Quest description. There is a special female elf being sold somewhere in the Stormspire capital. She can greatly help the host in his future journey. And to survive the coming storms, you must take your first step and claim a soul bound to your cause. Objective. Acquire a loyal elf companion, slave, contract, or otherwise, within 48 hours of entering Stormspire. Time limit, 47 hours, 59 minutes, 59 seconds remaining. Reward, plus 200 SP. Failure consequence, the elf will be sold to someone else. Ta-da! Greater than over equal to less than over equal to, Master's first real quest is here. Quick, go find a beautiful elf waifu before someone else snatches her. Omega. Orion blinked twice at the system screen. Are you fucking serious? He nearly shouted inside his mind. What happened, Master? This seems like a decent quest. She asked in confusion. Why this absurd mission? He rubbed his forehead. I was expecting more like reaching the top of the academy or building a foundation of my own in the capital city. But this? Sorry, Master, but I don't have any control over what quests are being given. It's directly related to your fate. Anyway, I have time. I'll try to look for her with Uncle Edgar tomorrow. He should be quite familiar with this place. He inwardly shook his head and decided. Yay! That's the spirit, Master. You can do it. Oh. The carriage soon entered the city, and the first thing that came into Orion's view was, surprisingly, a common area. He could see civilians walking here and there while the carriages continued to head deeper into the city. He tried to look around to see if anything was different farther into the distance, however, what came into his view was the same peaceful scene. Grandpa, why is the inside of the city so different from what I expected? He asked Eldrick. Eldrick stroked his beard. What were you even expecting? That the commoners would be living in celestial mansions? Orion's lips twitched. He couldn't see anything inside from the city walls except the royal palace and the pillars. I expected a more magnificent scene than this. Ha ha ha, you won't be disappointed. Eldrick laughed out loud and continued, the city is divided into 5 sections. The outermost ring is for commoners and residents. The 4th ring is for the artisans and merchants. They have the different guilds and unions here like the Adventurer Guild, Beastmaster Guild, Summoner Guild, etc. He paused. And the real deal starts from the 3rd ring, where the nobles and military reside. It has the bases of the nobles as well as the high-ranking military officers, and the Mage Tower of this kingdom as well. Orion raised an eyebrow at the mention of the Mage Tower. He wondered what people did there. Experiments? Research? Eldrick's voice grew heavy. Then comes the 2nd ring. It holds the core personnel of the kingdom. Thunderhall Academy, Duke Houses, Marquis Estates. That's where the core power of this kingdom resides. Orion noted this location to himself since he would be going to Thunderhall Academy soon. Then comes the final 1st ring, where the Royal Citadel is. Most people don't have the privilege of entering that place in their entire life, but those who have can never stop singing its praises. He finished speaking and explained the layout of the entire city within a few minutes. Orion's expression turned contemplative. Didn't Grandpa say he has a mansion near Thunderhall Academy? Does that mean he has a mansion in the 2nd ring? He focused on what affected him the most. So that means he is at least comparable to a Marquis house or a Duke house alone. He couldn't help but smile, thinking how strong his grandpa was. The carriage left the 5th ring after a while and entered the 4th ring. Orion noticed the sharp decline in walking commoners as more and more nobles came into view. They ranged from barons to earls, with some occasional sightings of Marquis houses. Spotting them was easy due to how huge their entourages were. But he didn't pay them much heed. He didn't plan to interact with them yet. Grandpa, is flying restricted in the capital? He asked curiously, since he saw no one flying or even a flying beast carriage. Search the Nelfer.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Eldrick nodded. Yes, no one is allowed to fly in the royal capital. It would be a big mess if just anyone could fly, after all. Orion nodded and continued looking out of the window. The carriage continued its steady pace through the 4th ring, passing elegant guild halls, bustling markets filled with exotic goods, and lively taverns frequented by adventurers from various races. Orion watched the cityscape come into view, taking in every new sight with keen interest. We will reach our mansion shortly, Eldrick announced, pulling Orion's attention back inside the carriage. Grandpa, your mansion is in the 2nd ring, right? Orion asked, confirming his earlier thoughts. Indeed, Eldrick replied with a satisfied nod. It's quite close to Thunderhall Academy, so it'll be convenient for you when you join. Orion smiled appreciatively. You really thought ahead, Grandpa. Celine chuckled softly. Of course, dear. Did you think we'd choose somewhere inconvenient? The carriage smoothly entered the 3rd ring, marked by a noticeable shift in architecture. Here, the buildings were grander, more ornate, with detailed carvings and enchantments glowing softly on the walls. Military patrols were more frequent, and Orion could sense a pressure in the air, a sense of authority and order. Passing the Mage Tower, Orion's eyes widened in fascination. The tower rose majestically toward the sky, its walls shimmering with countless runes. Streams of magical energy flowed visibly around it, creating an awe-inspiring spectacle. What exactly happens in the Mage Tower? Orion asked, unable to suppress his curiosity. Eldrick smiled knowingly. Research, experimentation, and the training of elite mages. It's essentially the heart of magical progress in Thunder Peak Kingdom. Perhaps one day you'll visit it yourself. Orion's eyes sparkled with excitement at the possibility, already planning future visits in his mind. Finally, the carriage approached the gateway to the 2nd ring. Guards stationed at the entry immediately recognized Eldrick's token and swiftly granted them access, saluting respectfully. As they entered the second ring, Orion felt another clear change. The streets were immaculate, lined with beautifully landscaped gardens and elegant mansions. Noble estates displayed their crests prominently, guarded discreetly by powerful warriors. Orion could sense numerous powerful auras from every direction, each mansion a den of hidden dragons. "This place is amazing," Rena murmured, eyes wide with wonder. Fiora nodded in agreement, taking in the sights silently. The carriage finally slowed, turning onto a private road leading up to an impressive mansion. It stood majestic, its architecture among the best in the area. The property was surrounded by lush gardens and high protective walls engraved with intricate runes. "Welcome to our Stormspire residence," Eldrick announced proudly as the carriage halted in front of the mansion's main entrance. Servants quickly approached, opening carriage doors and assisting the group out. Orion stepped down, breathing in the fresh, manna-rich air deeply. He smiled slightly at the familiar maids and butlers who had left before him. He could sense the powerful protective formations embedded around the estate. "It's beautiful," Orion sincerely praised. Eldrick laughed heartily. "Glad you approve. This will be your home from now on, Orion." Orion felt warmth bloom in his chest, smiling softly. "Thank you, Grandpa. Grandma." Celine gently placed her hand on his shoulder and said in a gentle voice, "How can we let our dear grandson run all over the city just to get to the academy? You deserve the best. Now, you can explore the mansion with Fiora and Rena. And tomorrow, you can explore the city with Edgar." Orion's eyes lit up. This was exactly what he wanted. He couldn't wait to explore the city tomorrow. Good, with that I might be able to do the quest. Meanwhile, Fiora's and Rena's eyes lit up with joy. They were also eager to explore the mansion with Orion. Edgar, Lucan, and Helena stood to the side, smiling at the trio's excitement. Orion stepped inside the mansion with Fiora and Rena following closely behind, their eyes sparkling with curiosity. The interior was breathtaking, grand staircases sweeping upward on either side of the entrance hall, intricate mana lamps casting soft, warm glows upon marble floors and high ceilings filled with artistic carvings. "Master, it's such a beautiful mansion. Your previous home looks like a beggar's cardboard house compared to it." Orion's lips twitched at her words. "Must you remind me of my past life? It's already behind me." "Is it?" Orion inwardly shook his head and wandered inside. First, they headed toward the library, guided by a helpful maid. "You two better learn the layout of the mansion tomorrow, you'll be the ones guiding me," Orion said with a smirk. Rena and Fiora bowed slightly and echoed in agreement, "Yes, Master." Orion nodded before the maid opened the gate of the library. All three of their eyes widened as they entered the expansive chamber filled with towering bookshelves. Ancient-looking tomes and scrolls lined every available space, neatly categorized by subject. He couldn't suppress a smile of excitement. "This is incredible," he murmured softly, already thinking about locking himself in the library and absorbing all this knowledge. Fiora and Rena also looked around. They found a section filled with various recipes and other materials catered to maids. Their eyes lit up, they decided to come here later to study in their free time. Next, the maid guided them to the training hall. This room was vast, the walls lined with a variety of weapons and training equipment. Magic formations were carved in all directions to reinforce the hall for intense training. Sparring dummies stood at the center of the room, ready for practice. Orion felt a thrill at the possibilities. "Finally, a nice place to train with all my heart," he said enthusiastically, testing the weight of a nearby training sword. Rena and Fiora stood at the back, smiling at Orion's enthusiasm. They didn't have as much interest in training as Orion did, all they wanted was to serve him properly and maybe, just maybe, stay by his side. The maid guided them next toward an expansive greenhouse filled with rare, magical plants. Orion's eyes widened as he stepped inside, the fragrant scent immediately enveloped him. Exotic flowers bloomed in vibrant colors, and strange, mana-rich fruits hung from carefully cultivated trees that lined the garden perfectly. Even the air seemed infused with high-quality mana. Incredible, Orion murmured, gently touching the leaves of a plant that shimmered with a faint blue glow. These are used in various potions and medicines, young master, the maid explained respectfully. Lady Celine told us to oversee their growth. She used to grow these herself when she was here. Grandma does? Orion asked, surprised but pleased. She never mentioned this to me. Lady Celine enjoys keeping some surprises, the maid replied with a knowing smile. Fiora and Rena curiously examined the plants, amazed at their diverse uses. Orion made a mental note to study them more thoroughly later. Leaving the greenhouse, the trio was shown other notable rooms, a massive dining hall with intricate crystal chandeliers, a music room lined with instruments he had never seen before, and even a private alchemy laboratory that sparked Orion's curiosity immensely. As daylight began to fade, the maid gently reminded them, dinner will soon be served. Lady Celine and Master Eldrick are waiting for you in the dining hall. Thank you, Orion nodded appreciatively. We'll head there right away. Walking into the dining hall, Orion saw Eldrick and Celine already seated at the table, chatting comfortably. The servants finished placing enticing dishes that filled the room with tantalizing aromas. Come quickly, dear, Celine beckoned warmly, gesturing to the seat beside her. Orion swiftly took his place, Fiora and Rena standing quietly behind the group. Did you enjoy your tour of the mansion? Celine asked, smiling as she filled Orion's plate generously. It was incredible, Orion replied earnestly, tasting the delicious food. This mansion has everything I could ever wish for. I'm glad, Celine chimed in, her eyes twinkling mischievously. But the mansion isn't the only interesting thing around here. You should know there's plenty of drama among the noble families here in Stormspire. Orion raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Like what, exactly? Celine leaned in slightly, eyes sparkling with excitement. Well, do you know about the Stormbolt house? It's one of the 3 duke houses of this kingdom. Recently, they went to attack one of the demonic strongholds on the outskirts of Thunder Peak Kingdom. Wait, there are demonic strongholds in this world? Orion quickly paused and asked. All this time he'd thought demons came from their own world and, after a war, returned. Of course, dear, as many as we'd like to forget. Celine shook her head. Anyway, once they reached the stronghold, it turned out the attack was led by the heir of the Stormbolt clan. Once the clan warriors realized that, their morale plummeted. However, the young heir managed to stabilize the situation and went to attack the stronghold. In the end, they not only lost badly but the heir even had to run back burnt black. Celine giggled at this point. The Duke was so angry with him that he personally led his guards and exterminated the demonic stronghold. Orion chuckled at the story of the young heir, however, it also showed him that identity means nothing in this world. If you are weak, you can be killed at any time. Interesting, Orion said thoughtfully, looking for anything more interesting. Anything else? Eldrick chuckled. Oh, there's always more. House Byerlock and House Stormark have been fighting openly after a failed marriage alliance. They've even caused trouble at court. CTHOvelfire.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Celine shook her head gently. Honestly, dear, these nobles can behave worse than children sometimes. And you should see how they act when someone from the royal family is involved. Royal family drama, too? Orion asked, genuinely surprised. Celine smiled knowingly, it's nothing major as of yet. The kids of the current king's older brother grew up and are causing a little trouble. Orion silently nodded, hearing their words, quietly planning how he will navigate in the capital. After dinner ended with pleasant chatter, he bid goodnight to Eldrick and Celine and excused himself, heading towards his new room. His room was expansive yet cozy, furnished elegantly with a large bed covered in luxurious silk, ornate wooden desks, and comfortable chairs arranged thoughtfully. Large windows overlooked the gardens, filling the room with gentle moonlight. He slowly walked around, inspecting everything, a faint smile on his lips. Not bad, he softly murmured to himself, finally settling into a plush chair by the window. What do you think, Lumi? He inwardly asked. Master, it's absolutely gorgeous. You finally have a room befitting your status. Greater than over equal to less than over equal to. Indeed, Orion sighed contentedly. Tomorrow will be a busy day. First, the quest about the elf, and then exploring the city more thoroughly. Yes, Master. We'll definitely complete the quest. I can't wait to see the elf you'll bring home. Greater than over equal to less than over equal to. Orion chuckled softly, shaking his head. Let's hope everything goes smoothly. The two of them continued chatting, discussing plans for the following day and occasionally talking about lighter topics about the capital. Gradually, his eyelids felt heavy, and exhaustion from the journey and the day's excitement caught up with him. Master, you seem tired. You should rest now, Lumi said softly, sensing his fatigue. Orion yawned lightly, nodding his head. You're right. Tomorrow will be busy enough. Good night, Lumi. Good night, Master. Sweet dreams. Closing his eyes, Orion quickly fell into a peaceful sleep, comforted by the soft, luxurious bed and silent surroundings. The next morning, gentle knocking at the door pulled Orion from his slumber. Come in, he said sleepily. Hearing his voice, Fiora and Rena entered quietly, smiling brightly as they approached the bed. Good morning, Master, Rena greeted cheerfully. Did you sleep well, Master? Fiora asked softly, her eyes warm with care. Morning, Orion murmured sleepily, stretching lazily before sitting up. Yeah, best sleep I've had in days. That's wonderful, Rena said happily. We prepared your bath already. Orion nodded and slowly stood up before following them to the bathing area. They gently assisted him with slow and careful movements. The warm bath quickly refreshed him, fully awakening his sleepy head. How I missed such baths during the last week, Orion softly hummed as Rena and Fiora helped him wear his clothes. Rena giggled, of course, it won't be as comfortable in the wilds as it is in the mansion. Fiora quietly tidied his clothes before looking him all over with a satisfied smile. She had opened up a lot more during the time they had spent together this past week. Orion smiled warmly at the two of them before heading down the stairs to the dining hall, finding Eldrick and Celine already there enjoying their morning tea. Ah, good morning, lad, Eldrick greeted warmly, gesturing to a seat beside him. Good morning, Grandpa, Grandma, Orion smiled, taking his seat as servants quickly placed breakfast before him. Ready to explore the capital today? Eldrick asked with a playful smile. Definitely, Orion replied enthusiastically. Any recommendations for places I shouldn't miss? Search *the novelfire.nt website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Eldrick thoughtfully stroked his beard. First, you must visit the central marketplace in the Fourth Ring. You'll find fascinating things there, and perhaps some treasure as well if you are lucky. Then, you should see the Adventurers Guild and Summoner Guild, lots of unique and powerful individuals frequent those places. Celine nodded in agreement, adding, don't forget about the Mage Tower, too. You might not enter today, but at least seeing it from up close would be good. And if you have time, pass by the Artisans District, you might find unique items crafted by the best artisans. I'll keep those in mind, Orion said, making mental notes. Just then, Edgar entered the dining hall, bowing respectfully. Young master, whenever you're ready, I'm at your disposal. Orion quickly finished his breakfast, wiping his mouth before standing up. Then let's head out after I'm done with breakfast, Uncle Edgar. But let's not delay it for too long, who knows, you might leave alone to play in the district otherwise. Edgar's lips twitched. Who do you take me for, young master? I'm not Lucan, I won't leave without you. Take your time eating breakfast, Orion. The capital isn't going anywhere, Celine smiled warmly, gesturing for Orion to eat slowly. Orion, on the other hand, didn't stop and continued eating the food. The capital might not be running, but I can't wait to see how it is for myself. She helplessly smiled and let him do as he wished. Eldrick chuckled, looking at how Orion was gulping down his food. Soon, he finished eating the good food. That was delicious. Even more delicious than the food I prepare for you? Celine mischievously asked. Orion quickly shook his head. How is that possible? Of course, your cooking is miles better, Grandma, he confidently said. Celine looked at him with a half-smile. I made the breakfast. Silence filled the hall as everyone stared at Orion silently. Eldrick used his entire willpower to stop himself from laughing out loud. It's about time I head out to explore the city. Orion quickly stood up and pulled Edgar's hand before running out of the gate. This brat. Celine gently chuckled and shook her head. Eldrick couldn't hold back his laughter anymore. Give him a rest. And you say I tease him a lot. The old couple continued laughing and chatting inside the dining room. Fiora and Rena looked at the empty gate before glancing at each other silently for a bit. Well, let's go and read some books in the library. We can maybe learn a thing or two for our master. Rena softly giggled and turned around to leave. Fiora lingered for a moment longer, looking towards the door before following after Rena. As they headed to the library, Orion and Edgar exited the mansion, stepping out into the luxurious streets of the second ring. That was dangerous, he exhaled a sigh after leaving the mansion. Edgar laughed, looking at him. Lady Celine can be playful sometimes. I remember how, in her younger days, everyone around her used to stay on their toes, fearing she might do something to them. Orion curiously looked at Edgar and asked, Oh? Do you know how Grandpa and Grandma met? Edgar stroked his beard. I was a servant of Master Eldrick since I was a teen. I have followed him from one place to another throughout my life. Of course, I know how they both met. And it was quite an exciting encounter. Orion's eyes filled with curiosity, and he continued asking, how did they meet? Edgar looked at him from the corner of his eyes and smirked. I will let Lady Celine tell you about it someday. I fear she might chop off my head if I spoiled this for her. Orion felt like beating him up. He exhaled a long breath. You really are something. Anyways, we should head out now. Where will we go first? Edgar looked towards the city. You are one to decide that, young master. I'm but a humble servant following you around. Orion gave him a side eye. You certainly don't act like one. These old bones need some fun at this old age. Or else life will be too boring, he chuckled and answered. Orion considered it for a moment. Let's go to the fourth ring. We can start by visiting the Adventurer Guild. Edgar nodded his head. That's expected. Which young man wouldn't want to visit the place where the kingdom's most hot-headed people gather? That's a nice place to start with. Orion agreed with him, and they both stepped towards the luxurious carriage waiting for them outside, finding Lucan already seated in the driver's spot, whistling cheerfully to himself. Morning, young master. Are we heading somewhere exciting today? Lucan asked enthusiastically, turning to face Orion with a bright grin. Good morning, Lucan, Orion replied with a faint smile. We're heading to the Adventurer Guild first. Focus on the road and don't get distracted by the beauties here. Lucan's grin widened confidently. Of course. Who do you think I am? I'm a professional driver. I won't get lost this easily. That's what worries me, Orion sighed dramatically, making Edgar chuckle lightly. Both of them stepped into the carriage. Lucan pouted briefly but quickly shook it off, guiding the horses gently onto the street. As the carriage smoothly rolled forward, Orion sat comfortably across from Edgar, looking out the window with anticipation. This carriage is so much better than our previous one, he sighed and said, feeling as if a commoner had become a noble all of a sudden. Edgar chuckled. Master didn't want to attract too much attention, so he used a normal one before. Orion nodded his head and looked out of the window. The streets of the second ring were pristine, lined with impeccably maintained gardens and luxurious estates just like yesterday. Every building they passed exuded grace, their grand entrances guarded by vigilant warriors who subtly observed all passing traffic. It was clear that each mansion was a powerhouse of influence and prestige inside the kingdom. Have you been here often, Uncle Edgar? Orion asked, curiosity evident in his voice. Edgar nodded thoughtfully. I've accompanied Master Eldrick countless times to events hosted by the nobility. Each noble house in this ring is a force to be reckoned with. Power, influence, and politics intertwine heavily here. You see those guards? He pointed at the guards stationed outside the estates of dukes. Orion nodded his head. Most of them are either Tier 7 or Tier 8 experts, he said. Orion raised an eyebrow, huh? But I remember Grandpa telling me that Tier 4 to Tier 6 awakeners are the backbone of a kingdom. And Tier 7 to Tier 9 powerhouses are national treasures. Edgar chuckled. He probably didn't want to scare you and told you about the smaller kingdoms. After all, Thunder Peak is one of the strongest kingdoms of humans. Orion softly nodded his head. From the looks of it, he had underestimated the noble houses of this kingdom. Uncle Edgar, what level is above the 9th tier? He asked what had been on his mind. He hadn't found information about this even in his dragon inheritance. But Lumi told him it was due to his young age. As he slowly grew older, more and more of his inheritance would be unlocked. Edgar smiled mysteriously. That is too far away from you, young master. No point in thinking about that, or you might get discouraged from the sheer strength gap. Oh, come on, I'm not that weak. Just tell me, Orion insisted on knowing. Edgar gently shook his head. It's for your own good, young master. The absolute majority of humans can't cross the level above the 9th tier. It's not only due to the absurd talent required, but it is also affected by the mana channels opened in the first 9 tiers. Orion calmly analyzed the information. How many mana channels would I need to open to surpass the 9th level? Edgar thought for a moment. You will need at the very least 45 channels open to reach beyond the 9th tier. The nobles here have multiple powerhouses above the 9th tier, especially the duke houses in the 2nd ring. Orion absorbed the information, carefully observing the mansions and noting their distinct crests and banners. He wondered what kind of interactions he might have with these powerful families during his stay in Stormspire. This is getting more and more fun. I gotta grind the levels here as quickly as I can. Soon, the carriage passed through the gates separating the 2nd ring from the 3rd. Guards in impressive armor saluted respectfully as Lucan showed Eldrick's token, quickly granting them passage. /novel_fire. At website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. The transition to the 3rd ring was subtle yet noticeable. Buildings were still grand, though clearly less extravagant compared to the 2nd ring. A clear military presence added an air of strict discipline and control here. Soldiers patrolled the streets regularly, going from one place to another, their presence intimidating the young nobles who were walking to and from their estates. This ring feels quite strict, Orion remarked, his gaze lingering on a squad of patrolling soldiers marching by. Edgar nodded while gazing out. Indeed. The 3rd ring is home to the nobility's residences, military barracks, the mage tower, and a couple more structures. It's more structured and disciplined than the other rings, with both military and aristocracy staying here. Orion turned his attention to the mage tower, visible even from their current distance. Its towering structure was magnificent, surrounded by a mystical aura that shimmered gently against the morning sun. Orion's eyes sparkled with excitement as he imagined going inside the mage tower to learn all of the secrets and wonders within. I can't wait to visit that tower, Orion murmured softly. You definitely will, young master, Edgar reassured him. It's a place of great knowledge and magic. Most of the kingdom's qualified mages gather there. Perhaps your talents could be further honed there. You really think so? Orion asked smugly. He knew full well of his talents. And if someone said that he was untalented, then no one in this world would be talented. Certainly, Edgar chuckled and nodded. I can feel the mana flowing naturally around you, as if it's eager to follow you. However, you don't have to worry about others finding out. One needs to be at a certain level and spend quite some time with you to recognize it. Orion rubbed his chin thoughtfully. That's troublesome? Do I even want to conceal that I'm a genius in the first place? Master doesn't need to hide with the protection of Grandpa Eldrick and Grandma Celine. Let all the ignorant idiots of this kingdom see what true talent is. Orion inwardly chuckled hearing her words. Yes, just wait for me to enter the academy then. I will enter with a bang. Lucan drove them steadily onward, the carriage soon approaching the bustling fourth ring. A clear difference was immediately evident. The fourth ring brimmed with lively energy, streets filled with merchants, artisans, adventurers, and various races mingled together. Market stalls overflowed with exotic goods, and vibrant banners advertised guild halls and shops. This place is lively, Orion remarked, observing the diverse crowd. This is the heart of commerce and adventure of this kingdom after all, Edgar explained. People from all corners of the kingdom and even other kingdoms come here for business, pleasure, or to seek fortune. As they passed through the vibrant markets, Orion eagerly observed the multitude of goods on display, exotic fruits, intricate artifacts, rare weapons, and mystical ingredients.